Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the City of Thousand Oaks City Council and Redevelopment Agency for Tuesday, November 16th, 2010. At this time, we'll call the meeting to order. Would you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Irwin?
Here.
Councilmember Glancy is absent. Mayor Pro Tem Fox?
Here.
Councilmember Bill De La Pena?
Present.
Mayor Gillette?
Here. Thank you. Item 4, request for continuance of any public hearing or agenda item. Item 5B, Proclamation National Hospice Month is being pulled and will be presented at another function. And item 9A, the Community Events Endowment Grants, will be moved up on the agenda and heard prior to the public hearing. At this time, we begin item 5, our special presentations. Give me a minute to get to the podium, and we'll begin. Joining me here will be our police chief, Jeff Madsen, and what rank are you now? Acting Chief Deputy Keith Parks. Good evening. Good evening. Former Police Chief Keith Parks. The Thousand Oaks Police Charitable Foundation was organized to promote community welfare through support of public safety and volunteer programs. The foundation... Go ahead, answer your phone, huh? That's fine, Mr. Wilson. Just go right ahead. Okay? Okay. Somebody's tacos aren't to their liking. The foundation's work enhances the quality of life within the community and deters crime through education and valuable youth and volunteer programs. In October, a successful fundraiser to support foundation programs took place. I'd like to introduce our police chief, Jeff Madsen. Jeff, if you'd come up, tell us about the event and your generous supporters.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. It's my pleasure to represent the City of Thousand Oaks in honoring the sponsors who help sustain the Thousand Oaks Police Charitable Foundation. Through their support of the foundation, they are one of the many community members who help maintain the status of the City of Thousand Oaks as one of the safest cities in the United States. Tonight, the City of Thousand Oaks shows their appreciation for our title and our platinum sponsors. As way of background, the foundation monies raised at our annual golf tournament and live auction go to support our youth and volunteer programs. These programs include the Volunteers in Policing, the Disaster Assistance Response Team, the Amateur Communication Service, the Resource Center Volunteers, and our Explorers. The monies also go to support the many classes and programs given by the Thousand Oaks Police Department, which include the new driver program called Start Smart, the Sheriff's Teen Traffic Offender Program, and the Parent Project. The monies also provide for education programs both at the local schools and the Parent-Teacher-Student Association meetings. These talks consist of the dangers and risks associated with underage drinking, as well as discussions on illegal drug and prescription drug abuse. Also included are programs aimed at our youth explaining the dangers of energy drinks and energy drinks spiked with alcohol, and also parent and student discussions on internet safety and how to prevent all forms of bullying. And finally, the monies also support our Explorer program, which gives young men and women between the ages of 14 and 20 the opportunity to explore the dynamic field of law enforcement. Tonight's special thanks goes out to our title sponsor, Pleasant Holidays, and their CEO, Jack Richards, without whose support we would not have the wonderful vacation packages which are offered at our live and silent auctions on the night of our charity golf tournament. Tonight we are recognizing our title sponsor and all our platinum sponsors who make these programs for our volunteers and youth possible, both through their hard work on the Thousand Oaks Police Charitable Foundation Board and through their donations. And now I'd like to invite the mayor back up here, and Acting Chief Keith Parks and our title sponsors and platinum sponsors come down here, and we'll give you your certificates of appreciation. Our first certificate of appreciation goes to Pleasant Holidays, and Executive Vice President Ron Kruger will be accepting. Our second certificate of appreciation goes to Amgen and will be accepted by Manager of Corporate Security Tom Sumner. Certificate of appreciation goes to Caruso Affiliated, the Promenade and the Lakes, and will be accepted by Rick Lemo, the Executive Vice President of Caruso Properties. Okay. A certificate of appreciation to Cisco's Restaurants, and former mayor and council member and owner of Cisco's, Bob Wilson, is accepting. Certificate of appreciation to the Oaks Shopping Center and senior manager for Maze Rich and the Oaks Shopping Center, Julia Ladd. Next certificate of appreciation goes to Caneo Awards, and the owner of Caneo Awards, Tammy Helmuth, will be receiving the award, the certificate. And a certificate of appreciation to our cart sponsor for the event, Movico and Bogart's Grill, which will be accepted by Bill Shoup, manager from Movico. And also, I just want to mention, they are not here today because they are out of state. The parking spot, Marriott's Resorts Hawaii, Starwood Hotels and Resorts in Hawaii, Hilton Hawaii, and Sandals and Beach Resorts also. We appreciate all their help. Thank you. Let's get a picture.
In case anyone missed the real significance of this, in a time of reduced resources, slowing down budgets and what have you, maintaining some of the items that the public safety component, the law enforcement component needs, it's the funds that are raised through this type of event that keep our law enforcement, our police officers equipped, absolute state of the art. And these types of foundations have been successfully formed all over the country, and we have one of the very best. And what comes out with this representation of community support for law enforcement is phenomenal, and it's the way it should be here in Thousand Oaks. Again, one of the safest cities in the United States with a population over 100,000. So to all of you, thank you so very, very much for your continued support.
I want to get a picture around the
I was just reminded that one other major sponsor in this organization is Silver Star Automotive Group, and they were not able to attend this evening, but they're among that group. Thank you to them. This time, we'll move to item 6, public comment section. Would the clerk please call the item?
This is the time and place for public comments. A speaker card is available for those wishing to address the City Council regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. All speakers for public hearing shall be called and heard during the public hearing. Pursuant to council standards of operation, the mayor may assist any speaker from straying into areas not within the city's jurisdiction. All remarks should be addressed to the council as a whole. Under state law, issues discussed under public comments can have no action unless listed on the agenda and may be referred to the city manager for administrative action or scheduled on a subsequent agenda. All documents for city council and the official city record should be presented to the city clerk prior to speaking. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. 2 people have presented cards, and pursuant to council standards, speakers are allowed 3 minutes. The yellow light displays when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. Our first speaker, Dr. Richard Elsley, followed by Mr. Nick Kidwai. Good evening, Dr. Elsley.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Dr. Richard Elsley. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks, and it is my pleasure to be here tonight to tell you about the next talk in the Discovery Center's Science Speaker Series. In the Science Speaker Series, we bring in scientists who are working in interesting, important areas, and who are those rare scientists who can describe what they're doing in a way that anybody can understand and enjoy. There are more and more reasons why it's important for us all to know a little about science. There are personal decisions we make, like in the grocery store, should we buy genetically modified food products? There are factors on a national level. Do we want to be leaders in the technologies of the 21st century? Things like renewable energy, biotechnology. People need to know about those areas. Do we want to get out from under having to get our energy from people who may not necessarily like us? And there are factors that affect the entire world. Now that scientists have shown beyond a reasonable doubt that the Earth's climate is changing and that the actions of we 6.8 billion people are one of the causes, we should understand the basic ideas of what's going on. But of course, the main reason to attend these talks is that learning about new science is just so darn much fun. Which brings us to Thursday night, November 18th at 7:30. The talk is going to be on the science behind crime scene investigation. CSI is a series of fascinating puzzles, and once you've solved all the puzzles, you can figure out who done it. Speaker Carolyn Ramon is a teacher who has developed a curriculum, entire curriculum in CSI. Kids love it. CSI is a kid magnet. I advise you all to come and bring high school, even middle school students with you. Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. at Baxter Biosciences on Lakeview Canyon, just south of T.O. Boulevard. You can find out more information at our website, which is sciencespeakerseries.org. sciencespeakerseries.org. I welcome you all to come.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elsley. Our second speaker, Mr. Nick Kidwai. Mr. Kidwai.
I begin in the name of God, who is most beneficial, most merciful. My name is Nick Iqbal Kidwai, and happy hello to Dr. Glancy. If he was here, he always laughed. And I said, I'm with the concerned citizen of Thousand Oaks. I hope to see him soon. I sent some information by fax, but I guess it was too late. I was working. I don't know why you play favorites that certain individuals' comments are responded to by the city manager and certain are not. Mine certainly were not in the last moment. I have faxed this. I will send this to you again. I talked about, as a committee member even, about the autumn all public hearing, that the planning commissioners, 2 of them who had voted for it, had asked that you should continue the hearing on December the 13th, December the 14th, because there is a very important study that is going to be released by the Department of Transportation. Also, I mean, you have continued the hearing from October anyway because of certain elections or some reasons, so I don't really see a reason why having the hearing in January or February would be so detrimental. And then our committee was abruptly canceled, and I am wondering if this is the right time. In fact, we should be proactive in that Ventura already has dismantled the auto mall and put a card club there and put retail there. And we have the problem with the former Courtesy Chevrolet, never going to be a Courtesy Chevrolet because Silver Star has taken a smaller space, and the West Oaks being open. So you really should look into having a zone change or allow some kind of retail. I mean, this is the vision that we expect our council people to take. There was an issue in the past that why is the city state of the address become a fundraiser for the chamber? I mean, nobody knows it does not cost $40 to have a simple lunch. And I used to attend them when they were $20, even if I did not support the person, because of just show of respect for the office of mayor. If TOTV can show that, I don't know how many people know this, but the chamber has gone one step further, and it's $10,500 in sponsors for this lunch. $10,500. I mean, is this going to benefit the mayor or certain council members? Is this a way to skirt the campaign rules? In fact, I would appreciate, I mean, that there were, I mean, as a candidate here, there were 10 candidates that you should really change some of your rules about and look at this, because it was done in '98, times have changed. The sign ordinance just really sucks. Thank you for letting me speak, Mayor.
We have one additional speaker under the public comments, Mr. John Fonte. Mr. Fonte.
John Fonte, Thousand Oaks. I'd like to comment on the council election, which appears not quite over, with Mayor Gillette leading by only a few votes, and there are thousands of votes yet to be counted. This is the first time in years, maybe more, or maybe ever, that more people have voted for the challengers than the incumbents. That speaks volumes. That voters are not happy with you. I'll say it again, the voters are not happy with you. Even though Claudia Bill de la Pena was an incumbent, she ran as a challenger. For the past 8 years, she's regularly challenged the status quo, the 4-to-1 majority. On controversial matters, she is the one on the typical 4-to-1 votes. If the votes for Claudia Bill de la Pena were added to the challenger votes, the results are startling. That 70% of votes cast did not go to incumbents, Mr. Gillette or Mr. Fox. Even though council may be back to the same 4-to-1 majority until the next election, I hope you realize that you have no mandate from the public. As a matter of fact, the current council majority was basically repudiated on November 2nd. Please keep that in mind when you are deciding controversial issues. On another matter, I was disheartened but not surprised to see Mayor Gillette intimidate a member of the audience at last week's council meeting for shaking her head for a comment made by Mr. Gillette. Mr. Gillette's actions violated council norms, which require council members to be respectful of the public. I would have hoped that the mayor pro tem could have stopped Mr. Gillette, but I guess Mr. Fox supports Mr. Gillette in that regard. This reminds me of last year when one of your appointed commissioners, Mr. Rick Lemo, viciously attacked me in the newspapers. I asked you then and I ask you now to stop the intimidation of the public. You're supposed to be public servants, and please act that way and be respectful of our First Amendment rights. Thank you.
That concludes our public comment section. We'll move to item 7, City Redevelopment Agency consent calendar. City and Redevelopment Agency consent calendar. Pleasure of the council. Mrs. Bildel-Opinion?
I would like to pull items D and F.
I'm sorry, D as in David?
D as in David, F as in Frank.
Okay, pleasure with the rest of the, calendar. Mrs. Irwin,
I'll move the rest of the calendar,
with the exception of items D and F.
with the exception of DNA.
Comment to the motion?
Excuse me, Mayor, we do have a couple speaker cards.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. We have George McCrae available for comment on the street rehab project, if there is no requirement. Roxanne Hughes, Williams Engineering, available for questions only. And Mr. Nick Kidwai. Mr. Kidwai.
Nick Kidwai, Director, Concerned Citizen of Thousand Oaks. Honorable Mayor, Council members, thank you for reminding me so vividly that citizens are really not welcome to speak on the consent calendar. I did send a fax at the last moment today in the afternoon, and I would read it. It's probably in council mail rather than green packet. I'm speaking about 7D as a former member of the Chamber of Commerce and a former employee of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. But the $10,000 gift of public funds to yet another study for the Chamber for making TO a tourism mecca. First of all, Mayor, this is a policy decision and does not belong on the consent calendar, which is meant for routine items. Also, $10,000 of taxpayer funds is $10,000. It's a trust. It doesn't need to be recklessly put in the consent calendar as if it's part of a $20 million budget and doesn't matter. Also, it is a fruitless, stupid study, as we all know the answer. This is yet another mere backdoor approach to feed the chamber. Like the discussion last week about the health benefits, that is both symbolic as well as actually affecting the bottom line of the city. At, say, $400 a membership, this represents 25 members, and that's about what the chamber gets every month, a whole month's new membership in $10,000, which is pocket change for you, but it's coming from these taxpayers. The city gave $30,000 in the past for the useless Buy Local campaign. And in fact, I have the consent calendar there, but you're buying 4 Ford vehicles from Sunrise Ford. I mean, we don't need to spend hard-earned tax dollars on these kind of issues. I mean, I'm glad that the Tea Party people over here, maybe that will make you wake up. The chamber is unfortunately, Mayor, engaging both in politics with the fundraiser cloaked in the State of Union address at $40, plus the unconscionable sponsorship opportunities to the tune of $11,500. This is a flagrant attempt to bypass the campaign ordinance, which limits campaigns to $360 per person or business. Thank you, Mr. Fox. You really have behind in your reading. I mean, this is every meeting. I'm glad that you don't look up how polite that is. This is a crime. $10,000 is what it costs for the night out, crime night out. That has been stopped for 2 years, sir. $10,000 is what it costs to thank the volunteers of the different committees. That has been slashed. And this is just $10,000 for the study. How much it will cost to find out is we are a tourism mecca. Wonderful. Disneyland is here. Copper Curtain. That's what I would advertise as the #1 attraction. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our speakers. We'll go back. I have a motion, no additional comment to the motion on the consent calendar with the exception of D and F. Please vote.
The motion carries 4-0 with Councilmember Glancy absent.
Thank you. Now we'll go back to item D. Mrs. Bill De La Pena.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item D deals with an item that was brought up by the last speaker, which is the funding of the study to determine the viability of a tourism collaborative. And my question to staff is, we formed this a while ago, and it is my recollection, and please correct me if I'm wrong, did we not already fund some costs the first time the council approved this, which was, I believe, last year?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In response to the question, the answer is no. About 5 years ago, brief historical review, the cities got together to consider whether it was worthy of putting together some kind of a collaborative effort, either directly or through the Chamber of Commerce, with respect to encouraging people to come to the Conejo Valley, stay, visit these theaters, spend money, and be an economic stimulus. At that time, the study was concluded. No decision was made. In view of the economics of the times, however, the cities got together about 5 months ago and decided to take a look at the issue again. There's been no appropriation. The cities of Agoura Hills and Westlake Village have appropriated $10,000 each for the study, and we're here tonight seeking our share of that study. It would, as the staff report indicates, be a Conejo Valley-wide program administered by the Chamber.
Okay, the audio was cutting in and out. I couldn't understand quite everything you were saying, but you're saying that 5 years ago, when this was first discussed, the cities got together, decided that perhaps it wasn't an urgent need to form this collaborative?
Well, that wasn't the time, and there was no appropriation then. There has been no appropriation to date.
Okay, and the study that was conducted by Agoura Hills, I believe, is that that was their own study that they paid for, the initial phase?
The City of Agoura Hills fronted the initial $10,000 to get the study going. As the staff report indicates, Phase 1 is done, and that Phase 1 relates to what are the assets in the community. We're sitting in one of the main ones, CLU, another one. There are a number of them that have been identified. Phase 2 would involve what would a collaborative look like, how would the assets be marshaled, how would it be marketed, and what would the results likely to be. I can tell you parenthetically that the concept does not involve attempting to attract hundreds or thousands of people to the Conejo Valley who wouldn't otherwise come here. What we're trying to establish is how can we get more economic activity out of those who already visit here for a variety of reasons.
Okay, and the company that is proposed to be hired is from Northridge, and is this not something with that city staff or staff from the 3 various cities, perhaps including yourself, being the economic development director, could work on? It's not something that staff can do?
Well, we have worked with the companies SMT Consulting. They're specialists in the tourism industry. I don't believe any staff in any of our 3 cities has that expertise. The study was very well written. I happen to have a copy of it here, 35 pages, a very good, understandable narrative. There's a lot of community outreach to get an understanding of what the assets are, how people view them, and how they may use them.
And then once the study is conducted, Phase 2 to the tune of, I'm assuming, $30,000, what is the next step?
The total of the studies would be $30,000, of which our share is $10,000. That's the issue you have before you this evening. The next step would be, assuming that the study shows that it is practical to create a collaborative, then the collaborative, in fact, would be formed. And most likely, we don't know the details yet in terms of the overall management, but Jill Lederer, the president of the Greater Conejo Valley Chamber of Commerce, has participated in our meetings, and it seems to make sense from a economic perspective to have a standing organization administer the program. But we aren't there yet. We don't know. We have to await the results of the study to determine whether, in fact, it's really practical. What would the practical have the collaborative? What would the program look like?
Okay, so the chamber, and how much do we pay the chamber every year for our membership?
We don't pay the chamber anything for our membership. We have a contract for specific services, which in 1 year it's $53,000. The alternate year is $43,000. The additional $10,000 on alternate years is for a retail census that they provide to us in a book form, and it's provided for here in City Hall so that we know at any given time what every retail asset is.
And if the city of Thousand Oaks were not to participate in sharing the cost, what would happen?
I can't tell you offhand whether the study would go forward, but we would not be part of the collaborative, not part of the results, and we have the biggest stake in it.
Thank you. Those are all the questions I have for this particular item.
That satisfy you? Okay. All right. Well, let's. All right. Item D. Move it. I'm just gonna take them one at a time. Okay. Anyone for item D? I'll move item D. Comment to the motion? There being none, please vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Bildale-Pena.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I'm not particularly enthralled to hear that we were working on this years ago, it was abandoned, and now that we're in dire financial need, all of a sudden we are trying to revive this and spend money on this. It's perhaps, in hindsight, we should have just really done it when we were discussing it the first time around. But I will approve this one, but I'm not sure whether any additional costs, whether I will be supportive of any additional costs in the future.
Thank you. Additional comments to the motion? Please vote.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Item F, an additional appropriation. Ms. Bildale-Pena.
Thank you. Item F has a lot of paperwork here tonight in our supplemental information packet, which I was trying to review, involving letters from lawyers and protest letters and the additional cost of or the expenditure of $3.8 million. I was wondering if staff could shed some light on this and actually explain this a little bit further as to why the company that did hire a lawyer, I believe, is now being chosen for this project. I'm not quite sure. As I said, I was trying to review the paperwork that was on our dais tonight, and I didn't get quite through the whole thing.
Thank you. Mr. Watkins or Mr. Spurgeon, clarification on item 7F, please.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Occasionally, when bids come in for construction projects, especially of this magnitude, there may be minor irregularities in the bids, and that was the case here. In fact, several of the bidders had some minor irregularities.
Excuse me, Mr. Spurgeon, could you do me a favor and do the audience a favor? Give a brief outline of what the project is, so I know what we're talking about.
Thank you. This project is for street rehabilitation, asphalt overlays of Thousand Oaks Boulevard, Lawrence Drive, and Teller Road in Newbury Park, Thousand Oaks Boulevard between Herbs Road and Duesenberg. This is a project that is funded with gas tax and also about $1.6 million in federal grant funding for transportation. So it's it's part of our ongoing street maintenance program. So bids were received, a number of bids were received, several contractors, again, as I mentioned, there were minor irregularities. Two of the contractors protested the apparent low bidders bid. Their protests were reviewed by our city attorney's office, and we found that the minor irregularities are in fact minor and then could be waived as part of an award recommendation, which we're making tonight. The additional information that you see in the green packet are from two of the contractors. One was from one of the contractors who had protested the apparent low bid, and then a reply from the apparent low bidder. Their attorney did prepare a detailed reply addressing each of the concerns from the protests. So again, our city attorney's office and staff have reviewed these in detail, and we find that the irregularities are minor, and within the state public contracts code, we can move forward with an award to the apparent low bidder.
Thank you. And of the $3.8 million, you mentioned gas tax and federal funding. Anything coming out of our general fund?
No.
So everything will be coming from, it is your testimony tonight that everything will be coming from gas tax funds. And let me look here, federal grants. And that would be all? Those two sources are the only funding sources?
There are $400,000 of funds from the Redevelopment Agency, which is an appropriate funding source for Thousand Oaks Boulevard, as it's in the TO, the Thousand Oaks redevelopment area.
Oh, okay, thank you very much.
Okay, nothing further. Any additional questions on item 7? Pleasure of the council. Mrs. Irwin?
I'll move item 7.
Have a motion? Comment to the motion? There being none, please vote.
Motion carries 4-0.
As announced, item 4, continuance of any public hearing or realignment of the agenda. Item 9 will now be heard, moved up. The committee excuse me, committee, commission, and board reports. Mr. Mead, come on down. How are you this evening? Good.
Members.
Mr. David Mead, chairman of the committee.
I'm again pleased to report that our committee reviewed a number of applications, 43 in total, and to determine recommendations to the council for funding under the Community Events Endowment Grant totaling $85,000. And that grant is divided up into 2 categories, the arts and then the sports others. And one minor correction on the council submission, I believe, to the council members. On item number 1, it should be award 40 grants, not 43. There were 43 total applications. 2 did not meet the criteria, and 1 was withdrawn as the event was not held. So we're recommending 40 grants tonight for this cycle.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mead. Questions of Mr. Mead? Anyone? I have 1 speaker card. Dr. Jerry Miller. Dr. Miller? Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, first off, I want to, as we near the end of this council year, I'm here to commend you and all the members of the council and our city administration for the near completion of leadership in another splendid year in the life of our community. We've been graced to live in this community. You have in years past provided extraordinary leadership, continue to do so, and I know the council in the years ahead will be forthright and effective in the same kinds of ways as this community moves forward. I rise for a moment simply to encourage your approval, which I don't think probably needs much support, but to encourage your approval for these events and the grants that have been already proposed by the committee. The support ranging from a few $100s to several $1,000s to help bring life and vitality to these events in our community these grants are far more important than the money. They demonstrate the support of the people of our city behind cultural and educational and entertainment events that reach out to the entire community. They're very valuable to us all. I give personal support to the Scandinavian Festival, which is held each April on the campus of California Lutheran University. This festival celebrates the heritage of the early settlers in certain parts of our Conejo Valley, and that heritage continues to live on in the names of streets in our community and parks that have been founded here, in our relationship as a city with the Parks and Recreation, and the City of Thousand Oaks and California Lutheran University through such valuable experiences as a shared community pool, many other evidences of that through the years. I want you to know how important this is, this kind of grant to the festival and to all that that festival represents as a heritage of our community. Thank you for your support. Thank you for the privilege of being here.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Any additional questions of Mr. Mead on this process? Pleasure of the council. Mrs. Irwin?
I'd like to move the recommendations of Mr. Mead and his committee, and thank you again for all the work you did. I also want to acknowledge, for some of you that are here for the first time, the foresight of previous councils to put aside money and to allow us to support these groups with the interest earned by that money. These endowments, I think there's we have 3 different endowment funds, and the money was set aside a number of years ago, and it has been a big benefit to this community. So thank you very much. And with that, I'll move the motion.
I have a motion to approve staff recommendation, both 1 and 2.
Yes.
Comments to the motion? Mrs. Bilder, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Mr. Mead as well as the committee members for doing what I think is one of the most challenging but yet most fulfilling tasks, namely helping groups, community groups, and our neighbors, and really enhancing the community at large. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Anything further? I just want to add my expression of appreciation, Mr. Mead. There are very few cities, especially of our size, that have this type of a situation, of a system in place to help these organizations, and small amounts sometimes mean an awful lot, especially in a time of diminishing public resources, and nonprofit assistance is shrinking regularly around us, and this truly helps these organizations and contributes to the quality of life in our community. Thank you so much for what you and your committee have done.
Great. Thank you again.
Okay. No additional comments to the motion. Please vote.
The vote shows Councilmember Fox abstaining. Is that incorrect? 4-0.
Okay. All right. Item 8. We have 2 items under 8, A1 and A2, and we're going to hear those together in one public hearing. Mrs. Lawrence, if you'd please open the hearing.
Hearing advertised as required by law is hereby open to consider agenda items 8A1 and 8A2. 881 is an appeal of the Planning Commission decision to deny development permit minor modification 2010-70274, Oak Tree permit 2010-70275, Newberry Park Library's solar installation and parking lot renovations located at 2311, 2331, 2333, and 2345 Borchard Road. The applicant and appellant is the City of Thousand Oaks. Item 8A2 is an award of the professional engineering services contract for solar systems at the Newbury Park Library and Civic Arts Plaza, and approving a second amendment to an engineering services contract with at the Newbury Park Library. A speaker card is available for those wishing to address the City Council regarding this public hearing. All documents for council and the official city record should be presented to the city clerk prior to speaking, and speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. 16 people have presented speaker cards, and pursuant to council standards, the appellant is allowed 15 minutes with a 5-minute rebuttal, and the remaining speakers are allowed 2 minutes each. The yellow light displays when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you very much. Mr. Prescott, do you have opening comments on this? Please.
Yes, just a few comments, Mr. Mayor. This project involves both, it's a city capital works project, but it involves a land use entitlement from the city. The municipal code does require that certain city capital projects be reviewed by the Planning Commission, and this particular project qualified for that review, so the method was to file the applications that you see in item 8A1. And that matter has been to the Planning Commission. They've made a decision, and the city, as the proponent of the project, upon the direction of the Council's Capital Facilities Committee and through the Finance Department Facilities Division, which is the arm of the city that is undertaking the project, has filed an appeal to bring the matter before the Council for final decision. That's 8A1, and Mr. Kearns, our permit process supervisor, will give the staff report on that, as we would do for any other appeal that came before the City Council. And then 8A2 is some of the contracts and appropriations that are needed to carry the project out. Those would be germane if the council approves the land use entitlement, which is 8A1. And the staff presentation on those matters will be given by Liz Perez, the city's facility manager. So what we'd like to do is go through both staff presentations and then open it for council questions, as is your normal practice, and then conduct the public hearing on both items together. At the end of the hearing, we would request the council to take action on 8A1 first and separately, and then if that passes, then corresponding action on 8A2 would be in order. When we get to the applicant appellant on 8A1, the appeal, the finance director, Mr. John Adams, will be representing the city as the appellant and giving that testimony in that role. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Kearns for the staff presentation on 8A1.
Thank you, Mr. Stephen Kearns, Senior Planner. Good evening, Mr. Kearns.
Good evening, Mayor Gillette and members of the City Council. As mentioned, item 8A1 before you is an appeal of a Planning Commission decision that denied a development permit application, DP 2010-70274, as well as an Oak Tree permit 2010-70275 for the property located at the southwest corner of Borchard and Michael Drive, which is the location of the Newbury Park Library. The appeal request is to approve certain modifications to the project site, which include parking lot and landscaping renovation, the installation of carports with solar panels in the front parking area, as well as removal of 7 oak trees and relocation of 1. This slide provides an aerial perspective of the subject site. As you can see from the aerial, there are 4 parcels of record. The center parcel is the library location. This slide is an image of the proposed site plan with the carport locations depicted in the parking area, shown as dashed rectangular shapes in the top portion of the image. These photos are the site as viewed from a Borchard Road perspective. The top photo demonstrates the site as it is now, without the solar panels and the carport structures, and the bottom photo is a photo sim of the site with the panels. The photo simulation does not reflect the site with the proposed additional landscaping along the perimeter. This is just a photo sim. It's a closer perspective from the Orchard Road vantage point. These photos are the site as viewed from a Michael Drive perspective. And the top photo, again, is the site as it is, without the carports, and the bottom is with the carports. And this photo simulation, as well as the ones before, do not simulate the site with the additional landscaping. To provide a little background for this property, in 1973, the underlying development permit, DP 73-373, was approved to allow development of the shopping center, which, after completion, included a Ralph's supermarket. In 1989, a modification was approved to allow the conversion of the tenant space that was formerly occupied by the Ralph's supermarket to the Newbury Park Library, which subsequently opened in 1991. On June 11th of 2010, the applications before you were submitted for processing. A planning commission hearing was scheduled to consider the request in accordance with the municipal code requirements, which requires their approval for city projects. The planning commission considered this item on September 27th and ultimately denied the request. And subsequently on October 7th, an appeal was filed by the city. And on November 3rd, city staff conducted a community informational meeting of the proposed project as requested by the Council Capital Facilities Committee. This meeting was conducted on the project site within the library. This slide is an existing view of the library, including the area of the proposed solar panels within the parking lot. As a summarized overview of the project, the request involves removal and replacement of the entire parking lot surface area. The site has not had any major repairs done in 19 years, and it's evident from the significant cracking within the parking area. The project will also incorporate removal or improvements to minimize stormwater runoff from the site, including pervious pavement, bioswales, and the installation of rainwater storage tanks to the rear of the library. Also, a comprehensive landscape modification is proposed to replace existing material, including removal of 7 oak trees and relocation of 1 oak tree to the northeast corner of the property. And the project is proposing installation of 6 carport structures that will utilize the photovoltaic solar panels as the roof element to provide electricity for the library. The proposed carports are located completely on the city-owned parcel in front of the library. The structure's roof areas are all 33 feet wide and range from 54 to 78.5 feet long. And the height of each structure will range from 8 to 10 feet at the lower end and gradually progress up to 14.5 to 18 feet at the higher end. The cumulative area of the solar panels provides about 13,000 square feet of solar array area. Although the final specifications of carports have not been determined at this point, the final designs will be within those ranges mentioned previously. And additionally, the final review of the architectural design will be reviewed by staff to ensure conformity with the city's architectural standards. As mentioned earlier, the Planning Commission considered and denied this request on September 27th. The Commission expressed their support of renewable energy, however, had concerns over the aesthetics of the project. The Commission at that time encouraged placement of the panels on the roof and ultimately requested additional analysis of the feasibility of placing the panels on top of the library itself. The appellant has identified 5 points in their appeal, and following are their points as well as staff's responses to each one. The first is that the aesthetic concerns of the project can be mitigated by the retention of the existing mature landscaping and installation of additional landscaping throughout the project site. Staff agrees that with the appellant's statements and believes that any negative aesthetic impact can be immediately offset by the retention of the majority of the existing perimeter trees, as well as the installation of additional trees throughout the site itself, and particularly along the perimeter. As these trees mature, the carport areas will progressively become more concealed by the tree canopies. The second point of appeal is that the project is partially being funded by grant monies, and the electricity cost savings will pay back the city contribution of the project over time. And since this is not in planning staff or the commission's purview to consider the financial benefits of the project, staff refers these benefits to city council for consideration. The third point is that the roof location alternative is cost prohibitive due to necessary upgrades to the roof structure to accommodate the panels, and there is insufficient area to provide substantially the same number of panels as there is in the parking lot area, as well as due to the insufficient area and shading of the roof, energy production, if they're installed on the roof, is ultimately reduced. Staff concurs that certain modifications would have to occur to the roof area to accommodate these solar panels. Without significant modifications to the roof, the same number of panels proposed in the parking area would not be able to be accommodated on the roof, and thereby reducing the amount of electricity produced. The fourth point is that the city has shown ongoing support of renewable energy, and that this project will not only be a demonstration project, but an educational tool for community awareness and the benefits of solar energy. Staff agrees with the appellant's statement. The fifth and final point in the appellant's appeal is that the proposed oak tree removals and relocation are warranted, since the trees included for removal are in poor health, and the transplanted tree will remain on site. Additionally, if the trees are left in place, continued clearance pruning will have to occur, and that will continue to negatively affect the health and the appearance of the trees. Staff is in agreement that all but one of the oak trees is in poor health and appearance. Over the years, it's obvious that these trees have been continually pruned to not only provide vehicular clearance, but also clearance from the existing parking lot lighting. Staff agrees that these trees should be removed and more appropriate landscaping provided in these areas. The oak trees being removed will also be replaced with 3 oak trees for each one being removed, and a site, an off-site location will benefit from these trees. Staff is recommending that the City Council adopt the resolution attached to the staff report to grant the appeal and approve the subject oak tree permit and development permit modification, subject to the conditions contained in that resolution. This concludes staff's introduction, and Liz Perez of the Finance Department will continue with item 882. Give us a second to transition.
Thank you, Mr. Kearns. I think what we'll do is have the second staff report from Ms. Perez, and then we can question all of staff about the entire project, if that's, the council's agreeable to that. Fine. Ms. Perez.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and members of the public listening. I'm Elizabeth Perez, the facilities manager for the city and the project manager for actually 2 projects that we're going to talk about this evening. And we've had several comments from the public in the last couple weeks that we're going to talk about. We're going to take a step back, and we're going to have a 30-second, 60-second education on photovoltaics before we get into the project. So there we go. So what are photovoltaics? Well, it's really light electricity, making electricity from light. And it's not really a new thing. In 1839, we have a French physicist who actually discovered that you could make electricity from light. And a lot of inventors played around with it for a number of years, including Edison, who won a Nobel Prize for his work. And it was around 1955 where it became an actual commercial product that somebody could use. Western Electric began selling commercial licenses for silicon PV technologies. So naturally, when you get a new technology, it's not ready for home use. So during the 60s and 70s, as you may know, a lot of the work went into NASA projects, satellites, space programs, remote areas where there was no power have used photovoltaics for over 40 years. In 1979, ARCO actually was one of the few in the nation that was producing over 1 megawatt of panels at their plant right here over the hill in Camarillo, California. That plant is still in production now as Solar World. In the 90s through present day, you see the pricing coming down. The more it becomes commercialized, the prices come within the realm of commercial opportunities, and that brings us sort of where we are today with photovoltaics. This is one of the Council's top priorities for fiscal year 10-11. Under 4, implement and enhance environmental programs. It's talking about Hill Canyon, but it also the city's goal to achieve energy self-sufficiency at Hill Canyon and other municipal facilities. And it was based on this goal and this priority that staff has worked with the Capital Facilities Committee and come up with these projects. Another background thing that's been going on with the state is Assembly Bill 32, you may have heard of, and the California Climate Action Registry. Assembly Bill 32 talks about reducing CO2 emissions, and this is statewide, back to 1990 levels by the year of 2020, which is about a 30-year reduction. So most governmental agencies have been proactive trying to work towards this goal, as with the City of Thousand Oaks. So we went and registered with the Climate Action Registry. We took a baseline year of 2000 and immediately saw that through programs we were already doing a 27% reduction by 2008. That was a lot through fuel-efficient fleet. 40% of our fleet right now is with alternative fuels, lighting retrofits, and mechanical upgrades that we're still doing today. We also saw another 13% reduction when Hill Canyon's 500 kW solar array went online in 2007. So we're really our leaders in Climate Action Registry and working towards the goals of the state with AB 32. So project history. We have a long history for the project. We met originally with the Capital Facilities Committee both through 2007 and 2008 and had direction to pursue solar at other facilities. We were wrapping up Hill Canyon, so we issued an RFQ in July of 2008. From that, we hired a team with Somas Engineering. Somas Engineering came to us with not only a design engineering group, they had the financing, the manufacturer, and the installer, which was quite impressive. So we began working with them, but they weren't proposing standard photovoltaics. They were proposing solar thermal, which is a little different, but it has a really great value of about 10 cents a kilowatt, which is less than we're paying now. So we kind of went down that path for a little while. And if you can see by these photo simulations, if you look at on the lower right here, this is solar thermal. The solar collector is actually up at the top. These are reflectors that reflect back up. The one problem, as you can see, is when you stick it up on top of a building, it's not too attractive. So working with the committee, they decided that probably wasn't the direction we should keep pursuing. So the Capital Facilities said, let's go back and look at all our facilities again, look who has the highest energy need, less aesthetic impact, and the best cost value financially. This is just an example of a standard rooftop solar array. The two projects that stood out that seemed to be the best were Hillcrest Center, which we had looked at before, but in carports. Now this project here is looking at on the rooftop itself, so it would not be visible. Well, we won't be talking about that tonight, but the Newbury Park Library came up. And this aerial shows that originally we actually were looking at the roof. You can see here, putting some solar on top. But working with SOMAS in their feasibility study, there was much more capital cost to upgrade the roof. It's an old wood-framed building, so there would have to be design, structural upgrades, and so the cost-benefit compared to the amount of solar, the number of panels that would actually fit up there is almost 30% less. So when you look at the amount of electricity generated compared to the capital cost of structurally upgrading the roof, it didn't make sense to use the roof. The edges are not used. You can't tell on this, but there's a slope and there's shading involved, so it could only be in the center. So this is the site plan you saw before. We'll talk a little more about pervious paving and further down in the presentation. Here's the basic layout. Again, you saw that the city owns the property in between here, so we're just looking at solar panels on that center property owned by the city. Of note, the two property owners on either side of us are in favor of the project, have stated so in writing. The bank property has verbally said that they also support the project. So again, some facts on why Newbury Park Library was chosen. They're a high electrical user. They use an average 370,000 kilowatt hours every year. They are open a lot of hours, lots of air conditioning, lots of high peak time that they're open. The projection, and this is conservative, is 60% of the total site needs would be produced. We're hoping this is going to go up. There's another project going on right now also to upgrade the mechanical systems, air conditioner and boilers that are 20 years old. So if we save 10% there, we hope to bump that number up, but we're trying to be conservative, say at a minimum 60%. The canopies, this site was specifically chosen because it does have mature edge trees. The trees, we'll see later on in a slide, are fairly well established, so that was a good way to soften the view of the canopies from the street. Another point was that this is a community demonstration project. So when you put them up on some of these roofs that nobody can access, it's really hard to take school kids for a tour. This is going to be a great companion project with the library for educational purposes, renewable energy, along with the sustainability of the parking lot. Will just be an all-around good demonstration project for sustainability. And the cost efficiencies, also since the library parking lot needed to be redone, it's already going to be dug up for the replacement of the asphalt, so doing the footings for the canopies, there's a lot of cost savings. This was just an early sketch to illustrate how the canopies would be over just the parking spaces to allow drive access, and that's the position they would be in. This was a very, very early concept just to show what the canopies could look like. These are two different layouts dividing up and segmenting the panels a little differently. We're basing it on maximizing the area. The larger picture here is 182 kilowatt DC production. That is what all the figures you will see are based on. The more you chop it up, you can go down 20% or so by adding more spaces between the panels. So anything that we're looking at now has the more coverage. Again, this is just showing the layout. This slide is illustrating the landscape plan that we are currently proposing. All the big red arrows here are showing new or replaced trees. They are currently shown as 24-inch box to fill in some gaps along the edge. The trees on this plan will look like they're the same size, but actually the tree specified in the interior is a smaller tree, more decorative tree that won't be affected by cutting because we can't shade the solar. The edge trees are more like a street tree, and we'll see them right there. This is currently what's out there. It's a Brazilian pepper. We currently have the one on the left, a 24-inch box proposed. You can see that the canopies may be another 2 feet or so wider if we step up to 36. The current plan shows 24. And then there's a cost difference. Mainly the cost difference, I'm told, is 36 is very hard to get. Sometimes you have to order them. This photo actually came from somewhere in Northern California. None of the local nurseries even had a 36-inch box in stock today. This is, again, the planning didn't have this illustration until I got this at 4:30 today, but this shows the panels. Actually, they're in here, but we put in the new trees. And so you can see that it really starts to fill in, and that you don't really see very much from the street. You'll see glimpses of it, but we still think it's a very softened view, that you're not just seeing these stark panels when you drive by. This is just an interior sketch of what we're kind of talking about. I'll have another example down the road, something with a base, posts with maybe curved brackets, and then the panels on top. Here's an example pretty close to what we're looking at. The base on the bottom helps protect the post from getting run into. This is, I'm not sure where the example is, but there's several of them around. The Northridge has them now, Pierce College. There's another view of what it would be like inside. And as a side note, I've read various articles where parking lots put these in, and this becomes the favorite parking space, especially when you have hot weather, because people enjoy parking in the shade. It becomes a benefit. And that is one of the sustainability points, something called the heat island effect. You actually heat up the city by the sun's rays hitting the ground. And we haven't talked about LEED tonight, but though you get LEED points, leadership and energy design points, by shading the parking lot with these panels. So the process since April was the committee agreed that we should pursue that site in particular. In June, City Council approved the $50,000 to go forward with design and solicit bids. In September, we took it to the Planning Commission, and they denied it, as was stated, based on aesthetics. We met with the Capital Facilities Committee twice, and they agreed to go ahead and appeal the project to City Council, but subsequently staff determined it would be beneficial to have a community meeting, since it was in denial, and see what other feedback we got. So on November 3rd, we held a community meeting at the Newbury Park Library. There was about 25 people in attendance, and staff presented a project summary similar to the one you're hearing tonight. Consultants in attendance were Digital Energy, who you will have a recommendation tonight to actually be awarded the contract to complete the design, and Jensen Design and Survey, who's been working on the parking lot project, so they were both in attendance. We also had members from Community Development, Finance, and Library. General comments, there were comments that it was a good example of sustainability, and there were favorable responses from the adjacent owners. There were aesthetic concerns of the canopies, of how they looked, and there were financial, fiscal impact use of public funds questions, and PV technology concerns that we're going to hopefully go over. Digital Energy is here and will be speaking later on this evening. So we received 17 comment cards from the 25 people. 6 were in favor, 8 not in favor, and 3 others. So going to funding, we have 3 funding sources we're looking at. The California State Initiative. This is funded by and available to Southern California Edison, PGE, and San Diego Gas and Electric rate-paying customers. What this means is everyone probably in this room pays Southern California Edison every month. A portion of your bill is for these solar projects. So in essence, you are paying for these right now. And this is going to be $2.1 billion over between 2007 and 2016. So if the city doesn't apply for these rebates, another city will, and they will go to somewhere else in California. So the money is really, it is for us. The goal of the state initiative is that they have 1,940 megawatts producing by the year 2017. This California State's incentive is oversight is by the Public Utilities Commission. Second source of funding is the ARA grants, American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. This was the federal funding that came from the government. The funds came through for this project through the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program. This is calculated money. It's through the U.S. Department of Energy through to the state. The city received $1.2 million, and it was determined that $800,000 of that would be used for solar, and $400 at the Newbury Park site and $400 at the Hillcrest site. There were questions about where these panels are made. There won't be any question because we're using ARA funds, there is a Buy American provision in the ARA funds. So all the materials must be manufactured and produced mostly in America. There's clauses, but it's mainly has to be here. Solar World and Camarillo qualifies. There are several producers that qualify for the Buy American, and that will be well documented. The third source is there will be a portion of general fund reserves for capital improvement projects. Finance and funding, backing up, when we started 2 years ago, we were looking at power purchase agreements, and we did start negotiations on that. Those have changed since Hill Canyon, and the state incentive to governmental agencies is now 32 cents a kilowatt hour, where it wasn't back then, and so it made the purchase performance turn out a little differently. So we applied for, and we have the reservation of the $372,000 from the California Solar Initiative. And since we have the ARA money, we did the pro forma analysis, and it was beneficial to have a city-owned system at this point rather than the power purchase agreement. So right now, the estimating cost is about 1.2. Subtracting out the incentive and the grants, we're looking at net general fund expense of the 440. And that's a potential annual savings, and this is a low conservative of $30,000 a year. And I have to apologize, your chart in the report shows a 11-year payback. It is the 15-year. That was not calculating in previous funds. So it's a 15-year simple payback. And we say simple payback, that doesn't take into account SC rates or other things. It could be quicker, but that's just an easy calculation. Maintenance and warranties, how long are these things going to last and what's it going to cost? Well, really, we're not doing the tracking ones. So if you have a fixed panel, there's not much you do to them except wash them off every once in a while. And I was told Hill Canyon does that about 3 times a year. Really is based on how much dust and how much rain you have, but it's not a big deal. The PV panels come with a standard 20. You can go up to a 25-year warranty. There's existing systems around well at 30 years still producing. Now they do have a degradation rate of 0.05% each year, so by year 20 it's about 10% less, but we took that into account in the performance, so it's still a beneficial thing to do, and we're going to be well worth the money. The inverters are sort of they convert the DC power to AC. I think I said that right? Yeah. Nod. That has a lesser lifespan, but that would just be a cost like anything else that we have in our capital projects. So maintenance costs, really there's not a whole lot to do with them, so we're saying it's less than $1,000 a year. It's just standard electrical maintenance equipment to take a look at it, and there's minimal staff time to keeping them washed down for dust removal. There's the Macy's Oaks Mall, just to show that these really are going in the community by private companies. This isn't just something the governmental agencies are doing. And I think it's the Kohl's maybe down the 23 on Moore Park. You can see a big array. And then here's the 2 photos of Hill Canyon. So now we're going to switch gears. I'm going to talk about, since these projects are so intertwined, the Newbury Park parking lot renovation project. As was stated, it's a complete removal and replacement of the asphalt, landscape improvements for drought-tolerant plant material, drip irrigation, and stormwater management. You don't get many opportunities to redo a parking lot. It only happens every 20, 25 years, so this is the opportunity for us to do a good demonstration project, put the pervious paving in, have better water infiltration, which is all being required of private development. We're also taking a leap and going ahead and saying we're going to collect the water off the roof, store it, and put it in the bioswale, which is, again, helping with stormwater management. Just to show some of the cracking that's going on, it's really at the point where it has to be done fairly soon. This is the back alley where we're talking about. This will be widened out just a bit. Plant material will be put back in. The water will be allowed to run down in the bioswale before it hits the storm drain and improve the groundwater quality. This illustrates the back parking lot again, where we have some of those tanks that possibly the inverters for solar will also be in the rear alley. Energy efficiency projects in general we've done at the library. The majority of lighting is efficient fluorescent fixtures. The heating cooling systems, as I stated, are under design review right now, and those will be replaced hopefully within the next 10 months. So once you get past these basic projects, solar is a good next step. We can always actually even do the solar on the roof eventually if we wanted to make the capital improvements to the roof structure. Other things that you could possibly do is the smart lighting systems, which respond to the lighting needs through photo and motion sensors. But those are sort of the last thing you do on the list of energy efficiency. So project benefits, this illustrates a commitment of the City Council to pursue renewable energy as on the goals, reduce city's carbon footprint to improve indoor air quality and overall health of the community, provide renewable energy for long-term cost benefits, and reduce dependence on fossil fuels. It's also a good educational and demonstration project for solar and stormwater sustainable design so that we can set the standard for private development. So staff's recommendation, again, is approve the appeal from the Planning Commission, award the contract for engineering services to Digital Energy, and approve the additional budget appropriation. Now, I want to note the two items on 8, the second one, Jensen Design and Survey, really have to do with the parking lot project, so they are separate and could be voted on separately, and that's Jensen Survey had additional work that they had to do. So that's the end of the presentation. I think all staff here is available for questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Perez, and also Mr. Kearns. This time we'll go to questions of staff, and I'll start to the left. Mrs. Irwin, please.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. I just wanted to go back to your slide 29. You're talking about a 15-year payback, and you are not including the increase in the cost of energy. I think in general we can expect 7% increase, and in the last 10 years it's been about 10% per year. With AB 32 not being suspended, wouldn't you expect that the cost of energy will increase at an even faster rate?
Yes, we definitely have heard that there's going to be increases. You never know, so we didn't want to kind of jump in there. I think actually when we did our own internal performers, we were doing 2 or 3% a year over the 20 years. But yes, we've heard up to 10%, you know, in the coming years. So definitely that brings the payback down, but we can't predict that, so that's why we left it at 15.
And my understanding is that we've had solar panels since in use since the 70s. You can really, it's very easy to imagine, since they're passive, that they would be lasting at least 30 years. So if you have much less than a 15-year payoff, you're basically getting 17, 18 years of free energy, correct?
Correct.
The other thing that I know there's still some concern with aesthetics, and actually I don't know, in your presentation you had the 3 different options of the layouts. What I would, if we end up moving forward with this, I would really like to have a final approval. I mean, what I would have in my motion is a final approval from the Capital Facilities project once it goes into design as to which one of the 3 layouts we would use. I'm not sure if having more spacing might make it more aesthetically pleasing, so that I'm just saying that would be part of the motion. The numbers are based on The big panels, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Serwin. Ms. Spilde La Pena.
Thank you. What happens after 25 years, perhaps 30 years? What happens once the system doesn't work very well anymore?
I suppose it would be like any other mechanical system that we own. You look at, are we going to replace or upgrade? I was reading an article just yesterday about that most of these are recyclable, so it's not like they just end up in the landfill. You know, hard to predict 25 years from now whether there'll be this super solar collector or there'll be some other completely new technology. So we would be treating it just like any other mechanical system that we had, and we'd address it at that time.
The warranty is up to 25 years. Did you factor in the cost, any additional cost, into this project for a 25-year warranty?
You know, I did not. I don't know what the additional cost is, but we can always do that as a bid alternate and see what the cost difference is, because it's like any warranty. They usually just charge you extra for the extra 5 years. So we'll look into that.
As a clarification, during the presentation by Mr. Kearns, it says in the on one slide that staff had not analyzed the financial benefit. Was that primarily for the Planning Commission that this wasn't done?
I was actually speaking from a planning perspective and Planning Commission perspective, that we didn't evaluate the project from a financial perspective. It was solely based on development standards and the zoning requirements.
That is what I wanted to have clarified. Thank you. And it says $440,000 would be coming out of our general fund, and we hope to have that paid back within 15 years. Free energy would only be about 60%, would it not? It's not 100% energy. It's just about 60-something percent.
Correct. That's right now today conservatively, but like I said, if we do the energy upgrade with the mechanical, we may end up being able to produce 70% of our power there.
If we were to factor in all $1.2 million, which this project costs, did you do the math? I'm trying to do the math. How many years it would take to actually have that all paid back?
I think I did, and I think it is around 25 years. So, you know, at that point, if you had no other funding, you would basically be saying, I'm paying the same amount, and that's not taking into consideration Edison's increases, but I'd be having renewable energy. I wouldn't be adding to our carbon footprint. So even without the funding from outside, it still would kind of pay itself back in a sense within the lifespan of the equipment.
Okay, and let me see here. The maintenance you expect to be about $1,000 per year?
That's merely for checking the inverters, but from what I'm told, if you have the warranty, there's not a whole lot that's going to go wrong with them. They're either going to not work or they work. So you just make sure that it's clean, the contactors are clean. It's a real minor, like any other electrical panel, and we don't spend very much money on those today.
Regarding the trees, the cost of getting the bigger trees, the 36-inch trees, that was not factored into this overall cost?
No. Those comments came out of the community meeting, so we just started delving into that. So we didn't factor in. I should have counted. I don't know how many trees it is, but it's an extra $500 a tree, so we're not adding, in perspective, a significant cost to the project if we did go to 36. It would give you that extra years, about a year's worth of growth. So if we want to kind of speed up the screening, we could certainly do that.
And there isn't a concern that any bigger trees would actually interfere with the system?
The trees we're talking about, I don't know if I can go back fast enough, are on the perimeter, so that they would not be shading the project. These, where's my little, okay. All these are the ones we're talking about. They would never cast a shadow further than this point, so they wouldn't be a problem.
Okay. And what is the reason that they could not be put on the roof?
Again, it was a cost, part of the feasibility that the original Somas Engineering, when they did the report, you're putting less panels, so you're producing less power, but your capital cost to improve the roof is higher. So when you look at the difference between the two, your payback's even worse. It gets higher, the difference between the two. We'd be producing, instead of $30,000 savings, $10,000 savings, but then we're putting upwards $400,000, $500,000 into the roof. You can see where the payback starts really stretching out.
The $1.2 million, does that include the paving, or is this just for the photovoltaic system?
That's just for the solar. The paving project has a separate project budget of $700 or $750, something like that.
Let's see here. What would be the cost if you did factor in at least a 10% increase in utility costs?
What would be the payback? Or what did you say? I'm sorry.
How much, yeah, what would be the cost, or how much longer would it take to actually, how long would the payback be? How much longer?
No, it would be less. If Edison was paying more, if we had to pay more to Edison, then the payback shortens because we're essentially saving more money.
I was talking about the energy increase, the cost of the rates.
Right. Help me understand that. If the we're avoiding the higher cost. So if Edison rates go up, it makes the project turn out better.
Okay.
Payback sooner and pays itself off sooner. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fox?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that this proposal centers on two main issues. One is the financing plan, and the other is the aesthetics. I want to examine a little bit more first the aesthetic issue. In reading the staff report, and as well as your report, you indicated that the monies that would be spent on a roof installation would be, you didn't say cost prohibitive, but you indicated that the value of solar energy versus the value of the cost made it not as good as idea. What exactly was the percentage? Because in looking at your site plan, it looked to me like the roof actually had more area, square footage, more than 13,000 square feet, than the proposal for the carports. So I guess my first question is, how many square feet is the roof area that could be used for the panels?
You know, I don't have the square footage, but if you could read this, it actually is only 30% as much. There's more. It looks like a lot, but we couldn't put that much up there. So
not without re-engineering the roof?
That re-engineering wouldn't have made any difference. That was the amount of solar you were going to get up there. It's, I don't know how to describe this. If you take this square and you multiply it by 3 or 4, we really have a lot more significant area on the carport area. The roof from this point slopes down, so you can't utilize that, and so I think it's a visual thing, but if you count number of panels, you can't physically put that many on the roof. It's 30% less.
All right. Could you use the roof and, could you do a combination of roof and carport?
Certainly, but whatever we do with the roof is going to require structural engineering and re-roofing, and actually this is one roof we have that doesn't leak at all, so we kind of didn't want to do that yet, but yeah, we could, sure.
All right. Well, keep in mind we're talking about a 30-year minimum. This is going to be around for a long time,
sure.
So we're going to live with this for a long time. And I think it's worth noting the Planning Commission thought this was a good idea, except for the aesthetic standpoint by a 5-0 vote. So I just don't think we dismiss that easily. Mm-hmm. I'm concerned because we have basically a few pictures, some renderings. If we get it wrong, it's a bad deal. If it ends up looking bad, I don't care how much energy we save, it would have been a poor decision. So I think we need to be really careful here. For me, I think I'd like staff to come back with some, and we'll see where council is, with a real analysis of a combination of the roof versus the carport, which we minimize the aesthetic impact because it's a lot less of the carports. And then how much less in terms of efficiency we're going to be getting. Is it 30%? Is that a conservative figure like the 60%, or have we really done those calculations?
I don't think we've gone into depth on the roof. It was sort of, it didn't make as much sense, so then you stop and you go the other direction, because when one starts looking like it's a bigger benefit. The other thing I want to caution the council with, if we don't move forward quickly on this, we may lose the $372,000 incentive.
Okay,
there are
I'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, there are some deadlines that we need to move forward with the project, so we may want to look at other options, but to hold up this current one may cause us to...
All right. Well, I'm not suggesting holding it up. If there's a deadline issue, then, Mr. Mitnick, that should have been evaluated prior to bringing it to the city council or to the committee, because we're being asked to make a decision. Mr. Irwin, did you want to weigh in?
I actually did want to weigh in. Just a reminder, the mayor and I have been sitting on this committee for 3 years, and we thoroughly looked at the roof as a possibility. It is just not I mean, we only want to do this if it is financially feasible, if the payoff period is, you know, what we're talking about in the 11 to 12-year range. When you talk about the cost of the roof, even combining the parking structure and the roof, it's just, we have gone through all the analysis over the last 3 years. That's why I had initially said that if it's determined that we want to move forward with this, that the final plan would be brought again in front of the Capital Facilities Committee. If we don't pass this tonight, we might as well just say we're not going to do the project, because there's a lot of money on the line right now, and it is we only want to do this if it fiscally makes sense. So it's perfectly fine if the council doesn't agree because of the aesthetics. I will say, which I find kind of ironic, that any business could put this up without council approval, because by state of California law, you cannot base approval of a solar project on aesthetics. So we've looked through it. I don't think that combination, that the committee found that it was feasible. So.
Okay, and I was going to note, I know this has been through a exhaustive committee process, so I'm certainly not minimizing that, and that information is helpful. With respect to the financing, again, with all due respect to the committee, I know there's $1.2 million that came out of the federal grant, and $372 out of the state. $800,000 has been earmarked for 2 projects. What happened to the other $400,000?
That's being used at Hill Canyon. I think they've drawn down almost the whole amount at this point for one of the cogen projects. Okay. So all of the $1.2 million has been spent? Or allocated? Correct.
Right. All right. Do we have an example where these actually exist, the type of carport or canopy that we're looking at, where they actually physically exist somewhere in a community nearby?
Northridge has them up now, Cal State Northridge, and if you ever make it up to Ventura, Patagonia, and Ventura has them in their parking lot, and Pierce College, those are probably the closest ones.
Okay.
That have canopies. I'm not sure if they're, if you want to look at the monitor again on slide 22, this is sort of what we're talking about. This is a little bit more industrial. We're talking about, instead of tube steel curved, maybe painted green to match the, I don't know if the TOTV wants to go to the slideshow again. Maybe not.
Anyway,
that's what we're talking about, is more curved steel with a color that matches other poles that we have around. But that's basically what they would look like. But you could go to those that are within 30 minutes of here.
Okay. We have to vote on this evening?
I think that Ms. Perez would say, but I mean, we're risking. It would be basically of supporting the concept and then either coming back and giving the award to the company and then maybe having one more review. We could do a review, have the whole council review the three different designs. But I think if the awards, I just think we're already on a really tight schedule because of the disapproval of the Planning Commission. So, but Ms. Perez, I'm sure, could add to that.
All right, that's all the questions I have, but I certainly have a few comments.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Just a couple quick things, and we'll get to the public hearing. Ms. Perez, I don't know if you're the right person to answer this, but and I've heard of it. What percent of the Hill Canyon treatment plant's energy needs are now provided by the solar tracking system that's out there?
You're right, I don't know. I mean, they're trying to get to 100% energy in addition to with their cogen, but...
I know the combination of solar and cogeneration is moving towards 100%.
Yeah, I think they're at 80. Yeah, they're roughly at 80% now, but that's a combination of the cogen and the solar.
Okay. Well, with that, then, do you happen to know, maybe Mr. Adams or someone knows, the energy cost prior to 2007 and the energy cost, can we get any kind of cost difference, actual cost difference with the installation and operation of the tracking system?
I think I just read something that they were trying to have a $200,000 annual savings, but again, that's what I think they were looking at.
Okay. Okay. I know it's significant. Okay. All right. Any further questions of staff? Anything else? Yes, Mr. Fox.
Yeah, just to reiterate, I know we have a number of speakers on the financing. Of the total estimated cost for construction, how much is coming out of our capital budget?
$400,000.
That's the $440,000.
Okay, and just for those at home that are not familiar with the city budgeting process, the capital budget is for what?
Maybe the finance director, but that's for capital project. That's not ongoing maintenance. It's for a major project. That's where we have the building projects, all the projects that are not what you would consider daily operational.
Right. So again, Ms. Perez, just I think for the benefit of the community, the capital budget is for building things, brick and mortar. It is not for library services. It is not for police services. It is not for public works services. It is not for any ongoing operating city services. It is for building things. So if we didn't spend the money out of this capital budget for this project, can you give the community and the council some examples of, because I know we have a capital budget with priorities, what other projects would we spend the money on? Just by way of example.
Well, so like the upgrades, the replacement of the mechanical at the library, this is all capital money. The parking lot is a capital. The Bollard project, we have some funds, but that was capital. Any renovation projects, like at the library when we did all the renovation projects.
Maybe Candy can help us out here a little bit. I get, because in fairness, you stated that the paving project is really a separate budget item, so we're not using the $400,000 for that.
Correct.
I guess we could, though.
We could use it.
Okay.
We could also use it for some of the street projects that we've got coming up. We're going to be losing some of our funding for overlays, so it may be that we need the general fund money for that. We've got roofing projects that come up all the time that I think we were talking about Newbury Park Library eventually needing to be re-roofed. So
right.
Those are the kind of things we use the capital project money for, and it would be allocated to those projects if you didn't do this project.
And just to reiterate what staff and I think Mr. Irwin indicated, I'm not necessarily indicating I'm supporting this, but just for clarification of what the facts are. If we choose not to do this, then we in effect lose the grant funding, for lack of a better description, and some of the incentive monies that are out there that if we don't use it, other cities will. And in fact, Ms. Perez indicated that we're all basically paying into this fund at the state level in terms of this rebate money that would be available to cities that qualify for these basically energy efficient programs. Is that correct?
The CSI money from the state would be lost for that
Right.
project. The ARA money funds we probably could move.
So we're talking about $372,000.
The 372, yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Fott. Mrs. Bildale-Opinion.
I do have a question that I would like to follow up on an earlier question. The cost of replacing the panels, the system after 25 or 30 years. Has staff considered saving the energy savings to put them into a maintenance operation sort of fund to use that money for any replacements in the future?
I'm not sure if Mr. Adams wants to address that. I mean, usually that's what the capital reserves are for. I don't think typically take certain funds to feed back in there. Is that?
And to answer your question, Claudia, I think what we're trying to do is reduce our operating costs by having projects like this, and by going around and doing energy efficient kind of activities like we've been doing, we reduce our operating costs. If it comes to a point where we could set money aside, that money would, if there was extra money after we're done with the fiscal year, it ends up going into our capital projects, and we can use it for capital projects later. So it does help our bottom line with our general fund, and so it is to our advantage to encourage as many of these projects as possible to reduce our operating costs.
Certainly, but we also have to take into consideration any future maintenance and replacements. If we don't factor that in now, then we will do ourselves a disservice 25 years from now when all of a sudden we need to replace certain panels, a number of panels, and where is the funding?
Well, it's a good idea. It's something that we do with our capital projects now, our smaller equipment. We actually set money aside for that, so like our vehicles and that sort of thing. So it's something we could consider doing for these kind of projects to replace in the future.
Okay.
Okay, no further questions, staff? Okay, at this point, I'll open the public hearing. We'll go to public presentations and comments and questions. The applicant, appellant, Mr. Adams, Finance Director. You'll be first up, Mr. Adams, and the city clerk advised me you have 15 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Gillette, City Council members. My name is John Adams. I'm the Finance Director for the City of Thousand Oaks. I'm also a resident of Thousand Oaks, and tonight I am representing the city as the appellant. I had a long presentation, but I'm going to really shorten it up. I'm going to spend a few minutes just to introduce our two consultants, part of our design team. So I'm going to call them up really fast. The first one is Jay Argon, who is with Digital Energy. He's going to do a brief intro on himself and their experience, talk about solar in general, should be a couple minutes, and then he'll introduce Rob Talmadge of Jensen Design and Surveying, who is the civil engineer for the parking lot design and the landscape. So let me introduce Jay.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council, and ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak a few words on this topic. Very briefly, I will give a quick summary of who I am and what we do here. I've been in the energy business for 30 years, 20 years, actually 24 years in Thousand Oaks, California. I'm the president of Digital Energy. We started the company in '89, and our main focus over the last 20 years has been energy. We specialize in energy efficiency that deals with buildings, that deals with renewable energy systems. So that's basically our background. I'm also a member of the California State Mechanical Review Board, so we end up reviewing projects for all the California university campuses. So it's a privilege to be here, and I'll give you, I made notes as long, and there are a lot of good questions on the photovoltaic, and I'll be happy to give you my sense of input on some of those as well. The most important point I'd like to make are in the area of just looking at the overall industry for a moment. Ms. Perez mentioned AB 32. That truly was a very pivotal step in terms of the greenhouse gas emission control within the state. One of the things that I also want to add is there is what is known as a renewable portfolio standard, which pretty much requires that the retail sellers of electricity in California, that includes all the investor-owned utilities, they had to achieve about 20% of their energy generation through renewable energy, so which is another significant factor that has pretty much propelled the solar industry towards greater production. In terms of what we have achieved as Californians, and every Californian assembled in this room should be proud that we are still #1 in the nation in terms of overall solar energy production. If you look at the entire capacity of solar production in the state, in the country, actually, we are around 700 megawatts, and California contributes to over 50% of the capacity, so which is a great step, and I think that's something that every Californian should be proud about. But overall, on a worldwide basis, California is still lagging. The entire country is lagging behind. Germany is #1. Japan, Spain, so they're really beating the record in terms of overall capacity. But the good news is California is the largest, and 50% of the U.S. capacity is in California. So that's really something that could not have been accomplished but for the vision of the leaders, not just in the city, in the state, in the community, but in the entire in the nation. There is one thing I want to talk about, which again relates to the significant way in which the solar industry is moving forward in the country. Statistics show that based on the solar production that's occurring right now and installations that are going on in the country, stats show that 90,000 jobs have been created dealing with solar energy alone. And it's growing at the rate of 27% per year, which is significant. So this industry is moving at an extremely fast pace. Compared to the capacity we have today, which is about 700 megawatt, in about 3 years, we expect the capacity to go up to 1,200 megawatt. So it's a fast-moving industry, which is good to know. Let me talk very briefly about some of the public sector projects that are currently going on, just so that everybody is aware of what's going on around us right here in California. Just about a month ago, City of Huntington Beach, they approved a 2-megawatt project, solar project, and we were one of the engineers involved in the development of the project. We have numerous cities, counties, as we speak, that are proceeding on solar projects. Glendale Unified District, for example, they recently retained us to look at solar in 36 different schools. So Orange County, another example of an entity that is doing solar projects all over. I think their capacity target is about more than 2 megawatt. So we have quite a few projects that are going on around us, and I wanted to address very briefly a couple of questions that came along, and I think it will help the council get some more specific information on this. Architecture is a #1 issue. When we take on a project for any design, looks the way it looks, its compatibility with the existing buildings, its color, type of steel, whether we put a simple T or we put some curves in the beams to make it look good. Those are really #1 priority in terms of the design process. So typically what we do, and which we did for Huntington Beach, is as we go through the design process, we look at various kinds of layouts, various kinds of structural supports to see what kind of structure makes the best fit for that location. Obviously, we're not trying to build a Taj Mahal in a parking lot, but at the same time, we don't want to make it look like an industrial structure. So in terms of the process for design, architecture is really #1, and we go through that extensively. Type of layout is very critical, which is extremely important, because type of layout determines not only the efficiency of the panels, efficiency of overall production, but it also determines how the overall assembly looks within the parking lot. The way the panels are tilted, angled, very important from an efficiency standpoint and maintenance standpoint, because we want to make sure as far as possible that when rain falls on the panels, the water doesn't collect and stay there for too long. So we want to maintain a minimum inclination, minimum tilt. At the same time, we don't want to make it too much of a tilt, because anytime you increase a tilt over 10 degrees, it ramps up the cost of construction. So we are careful about those kinds of choices. Exterior lighting is an important choice, because one of the things that we always want to make sure during the design process is that there's adequate lighting for people to park the cars at nighttime and safe lighting. So those are some of the various design issues we go through. But let me very briefly touch upon some of the good questions that came along as we were discussing this a minute ago. We talked about tree interference. That's one of the questions that the council asked. As we design the project, one of the first things we do is we look for interference from all areas, not only trees, but adjacent buildings, adjacent structures. We have meters that actually can tell us on an yearly basis, looking at 15-minute intervals on solar radiation data, what is the optimal location. If there are certain locations which don't make sense, we really do not plan on placing any panels in that location. So the tree interference is something that we can deal with. We have the capability to analyze each spot within the parking lot to see what is the right optimal choice. Question came about on the 15-year payback issue. You're very right that as the escalation goes up, one of the things that's happening in California is that even though we are #1 in the nation, 60 to 70% of the energy used for electricity power production still comes from natural gas and coal. So that's 60 to 65%. Or even 70%, depending on which area of California you look at. So we are always exposed as a nation, as a state, to vulnerability in changes in the fuel prices. There is absolutely no guarantee today that Edison will hold its escalation rate to 2% or 3%. It can be all over the place. So by increasing solar production on a statewide basis, we are really reducing risk. So that's something that we all, as Californians, would need to understand. There is a question about what happens to the system after 20 years. Generally, if you see the overall PV industry and the way it is moving, the efficiency of panels has gradually changed. It was 5 years ago, if you asked me what is the efficiency, I would probably say only 8 to 9%. What is the state of the art today is more like 17%. We can actually get, although they're slightly more expensive, we can get panels at 17%. 20 years from now, chances are that panels will be 39% efficient, but we cannot wait for them for 20 years. So in terms of what happens after 20 years, it's very likely that the structure will remain the same, the electrical infrastructure will remain the same, but what does change is the technology which will help us procure more efficient panels 20 years down the road. But the best part is that the existing structure that houses the panels can still remain the same. So the cost, which is a factor which is a really function of production versus demand, is if you, once again, on the cost, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, the cost of PV was probably more like just the modules, $12 to $15 per watt. Today, you can go to a public bidding situation, you can get the PV cost down to less than $1.75 per watt. So what happens in 20 years? It's very possible that the cost of production of very high efficiency panels can be as low as $1 per watt. So there are a whole bunch of factors that make it pretty much impossible today to predict exactly what the payback will be based on all the factors. It is impossible to predict what the cost will be 20 years from now. But clearly, so long as there is a huge impetus in the industry to build more solar projects across cities, across nations, production will increase. Huge corporations are pouring huge money into research. DOE is pouring huge money into the research. So chances are that 20 years from now, the question is, can we produce more power in the same layout? Yes, we can. Chances are, I'll bet you 10 to 1, that we could probably produce 25% more power in the same area 20 years from now. So that's the way the technology moves. There is a very good discussion on roof capacity. One of the things that happens is, anytime you design solar projects, we worry about intershadow effects, meaning when you have PV panels oriented around 10 degrees, we worry about shading caused by one area over the next area. That's one issue. Second issue is, when you analyze a project on a building roof, we have to worry about seismic loading, wind loading, as well as the gravitational force. So when you put all these three together, although there is physical space available on the roof, by the time you analyze the forces acting on each structural member going all the way from the top to the bottom, it turns out that the existing structures mostly cannot accommodate the load that we would like to see accommodate. So because of that, historically what we have seen is the capacity of a roof, just because the area exists, doesn't really mean anything, because by the time you analyze all the forces involved, they will find, especially wood frame structures, which is the case in the Newbury Park Library, it is pretty much known fact based on experience that anytime you place structures, more weight on the roof, more wind loading on the roof, we have to spend more money on the structure. So for that reason, I think it's a pretty good bet to indicate now that the better bet for you is to spend money on the parking lot as opposed to the roof. Also, the issue pertaining to maintenance. Anytime you have anchoring support on the roof, you have to worry about the life of the membrane, leaks in the roof, maintenance impact of the potential leaks, which are absolutely a nightmare from a maintenance standpoint. So typically in the industry, what we have seen, especially in California, is more and more projects going in parking lots because it's easy to do, easy to replicate, easy to mass produce steel, and least chance of a long-term maintenance issue. There is a good question about the incentives and the time value of incentives. Typically, if you recall the PUC, Public Utilities Commission incentive structure, the way it is done is PUC estimated that the cost of production of PV panels will actually decline over time. With the result, they created an incentive structure that has a high value in the beginning. For example, if you did a project 5 years ago, you probably would get about $4 to $5 per watt. But today, you get probably $1.50 per watt. So the entire incentive mechanism designed by PUC, the CEC, and those agencies recognizes the fact that incentives will go down with time. So as Ms. Perez pointed out, time is indeed of the essence. Those are some of the main comments I wanted to make, and were there any other questions I'll be happy to take on this topic? But again, I do appreciate the opportunity to speak a few words on this.
Thank you very much. Mr. Adams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Robert Talmadge. I'm with Jensen Design and Survey, the civil engineering company retained by the city for the project. And, civil engineering consultants, usually our job is make everything run downhill. They put us away in a closet and that's it. Well, nowadays, with drainage mitigation requirements that we have to deal with, a lot of attention is being put towards that. And when the city brought us on board for the project, we realized that you had a very great opportunity to do some very simple and passive things to mitigate some storm drain runoff with the permeable pavement, the bioswale that we're proposing on the back of the library. You saw a slide earlier. You could go in and repave the parking lot, but that maintains a status quo situation for drainage. With what we're proposing here, really is common practice now in site development, whether it's institutional, governmental, or private. A lot of the things that you're doing in your parking lot are what private developments are being conditioned for now. And what you're doing is really going to be, in the long term, a big benefit. You have several projects in the city that are using these types of drainage techniques. Just to let you know, we also have practical experience right here in the city with some of the work that we've done at Cal Lutheran. We're the civil design consultants for that project, and they have permeable pavement, bioswales, and other drainage mitigation devices up there as well. So I want to keep it real brief, but thank you for putting us on the project, and you're really doing the right thing, and it's something that I think the city can be proud of in the long run.
Thank you
very much. If there's any questions,
much.
Thanks.
I think as the applicant, that concludes our 15 minutes, and we'll turn it over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adams. Our first speaker, I'll call a couple of speakers at a time. If you wouldn't mind, please. There's a chair right behind the podium. If you kind of move down there, and we'll move this as quickly as we possibly can. The city clerk advised each speaker will have 2 minutes. Our first speaker will be Richard Murphy, followed by Allison Ranello. Richard Murphy. Richard. Oh, that's fine, sir. And followed by Bob Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council member, for letting me speak. I have several issues I want to go over.
Mr. Murphy, could I ask you, get a little bit closer to the microphone, please, so people can, you've got a soft voice and people can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I respectfully submit the following questions and concerns. The storage batteries that are often used in these setups, lead acid, what will be the annual cost to replace them if applicable, and what's the environmental impact? 2, with companies going broke right and left, surely you'll require a bond to ensure the panel's performance over 25 years, and what will that cost? 3, The really good panels are subject to theft, and over the last 10 years, according to citydata.com, thefts have increased in this area about 10%. And what's the game plan when you're counting on monies from the state and California goes bankrupt? Are you counting on Thousand Oaks taxpayers to foot the bill then? And 5, I believe you've spent a lot of time, hard work on this project, but times have changed a lot in the last 3 years. There's a number of car dealers that have had to close, and a lot of businesses. You have to drive down Thousand Oaks Boulevard to see how many businesses have failed. So, and there's been numerous homes have been foreclosed, and how many people have lost their jobs and unable to get another one. I would suggest that as you raise taxes, as you increase spending and raise taxes, you squeeze jobs out of the marketplace. And this $1.2 billion has to be paid for somehow. My time up. I'm sorry. Okay, that's all right.
Thank you very much. Allison Ranello, I think that's an R, followed by Bob Williams, followed by Diego Cruz. Good evening.
Good evening. Is it 2 minutes or 3 minutes that each speaker has?
2 minutes.
Okay. Allison Ranallo, Newbury Park. In theory, I'm not opposed to solar panels. For this project, I am, mostly for aesthetic concerns, as Councilmember Fox expressed. My father actually installed solar panels years ago for his pool, but it was both aesthetically pleasing and privately funded. He put the solar panels on a patio cover so that the panels themselves were not at all visible, and he did have an architecturally pleasing plan for the patio cover itself. My opposition to this project is mostly aesthetic, but also I've heard some terms bandied about here tonight, and I'm not completely signed on to what has become public opinion that we have a global warming or climate change problem. That's a discussion maybe for another night. But to the extent that California is incentivizing cities to engage in solar projects, I don't subscribe to that, and I don't believe that Thousand Oaks should spend more money than they would otherwise on a landscaping project in order to get incentive funds from the state. If we take those funds, we spend additional funds that wouldn't otherwise be spent on a project that will take 15 years to pay back with unknown costs for maintenance and capital improvements down the line. And there's the aesthetic cost I must address again. There's a daily cost, I think, of driving down Michael Drive or Borchard Road and seeing these canopies screened by trees, okay, but as you actually drive into the parking lot, what will face you are these tilted panels. It will look industrial regardless of attempts to make them look more pleasing to the eye. There's a real benefit to living in Thousand Oaks, and that is that it's a beautiful community, and I would hope that this would be denied. I'm opposed to the project because of mostly aesthetic concerns and additionally financial. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Williams, followed by Diego Cruz, followed by Stephen Metz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bob Williams, live in Newbury Park. As this location that we're proposing, these car parts, is a gateway to our city over there. Everyone that comes into Newbury Park is going to see these ugly carports with some kind of panels on top, and it's going to be very, very unpleasant sight. I understand that little research here, none of the council members live in Newbury Park, but this is the place you want to set these. I don't think that's the perception you want to live, you want to leave with. Help us keep our city as a proud place. There's a lot of places that you could put these panels. I'm not against solar, but I'm against the carports going up in what is an open area. The Thousand Oaks, they benefit from open areas. We got oak trees planted in the parking lot. Now they're going to take these and they're going to plant some posts. I urge you to really reconsider this project and put it someplace else. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Diego Cruz, followed by Stephen Metz, followed by Barbara Henriquez. Yes, sir.
My name is Diego Cruz. I live in Dos Vientos. This is uneconomical, unnecessary, and frustrating. It's frustrating because you say you have to do this because you're getting money from the federal government, and you're getting money from the state government. The federal government doesn't have any money. They're borrowing from China. So we're going to use that money to do this project. The state government doesn't have any money. They owe $20 billion. But we're going to use their money to fund this project. The city has the $400,000 on the capital budget, but you can change that and move that to your essential services budget. Now they're going to raise my taxes because of all of this. They're going to tell me, we have to raise your taxes because we got to support essential services, we have to support the education of children, we have to feed the orphans, and we have to support police and firemen. But no, they're going to raise my taxes because of projects like this. So I'm completely against this, and I hope you vote no on this. Somebody has to start making sense and stop the unnecessary spending. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Excuse me. Stephen Metz, followed by Barbara. I think it's Okay, thank you. And Carolyn Gayo. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name's Steve Metz. I live in Newbury Park, and most of my questions have already been answered by the people that represent the city here. I appreciate the mayor and the council giving me time to speak, but I wondered where the carports were coming from, and when I saw the article in the paper, and I didn't know that. I knew there was no existing carports, and the carports that I've seen here, they're aesthetically, that's a word I don't use too often, not very pleasing. And I'm all for solar. You know, solar's good, but maybe we don't need quite so much solar, and we can put some of it up on the roof, I believe, like there's been a couple suggestions that have been made. I don't know what the cost of the carports are, but there was, 4 carports, I believe, in the photos that were shown. Maybe that can go into making the roof, reinforcing the roof, if that's what it takes. But I think for Newbury Park, I think it's a lousy idea. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Barbara, how do you pronounce your last name? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble.
That's okay. Haneke.
Haneke.
Right.
Barbara Haneke,
yes.
Followed by Carolyn Chao, followed by John Anderson. Please.
Okay. I'm Barbara Haneke. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks. And I think I have a different perspective. I'm not speaking to whether this is a solar project or not. I'm speaking to whether it's a library. Is it the appropriate location? We have a 15-year project. You're spending $440,000 minimum of my taxpayer money. I believe in 15 years the library model is going to look a lot different. It won't necessarily be a building of brick and mortar. With the electronics process, with libraries are going to change. And you're putting this in a 1973 Ralph's renovated building. So I'm questioning, is this the proper place Another thing I would like you to consider, and this is due to libraries. Libraries are being privatized. There are 3 cities in California, Riverside, Santa Clarita, and most recently Camarillo has withdrawn from the county library system and has privatized the library, which they believe will save them $70,000 a year. So you might want to think about that when you're looking at our taxpayer dollars. So those are my 2 thoughts, and mainly I'm really concerned that you're putting dollars in a system that is going to change. The library system will change. In 15 years. We will not have brick and mortar. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn Chaillot, John Anderson, and Jeffrey Bride. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Carolyn Guillot, Newbury Park. The Planning Commission, commissioned by the City Council, voted against this project unanimously based on aesthetics. The City Council appealed their own commission's decision by simply finding ways to try to cover up the ugliness of their solar panels. So they acknowledged that the panels are ugly, and they moved to partially cover up the panels from view from the street. But they did nothing to obscure the ugliness from library patrons. When walking away from the library, patrons will see a structure similar to carports standing behind, the carports that stand behind unimpressive apartment buildings. The structures are dark, cramped, and claustrophobic. My conclusion is confirmed by the pictures in your staff report used for comparison. The proposal is calling for less space between the panels, meaning more closed-in feeling. This city supports open space. This structure, to hold up solar panels, will totally reverse the feeling of open space at the library. It will instead create a feeling of danger. I wish to ask, have you taken a survey of library patrons to see if they want this structure outside their library? They are taxpayers. I understand this library is one of the most used in the state. Have we considered them? Ms. Irwin said, we only want to do this project if it fiscally makes sense. I'm reminded of cars with stickers saying they'll get 40 miles per gallon, and they never live up to that. Government projects always fall short of their estimated cost-benefit ratio. You say we'll lose a grant if we don't go forward now. We lose money to spend money. Reminds me of a wife saying, honey, I bought this dress on sale. I saved $100. Just to close, in Spain's effort to go green, for every green job they gained, they lost more than 2 jobs. Please remember this. Thank you.
Thank you. John Anderson, followed by Jeffrey Bride, followed by Nari Jalokian. Best I can do with it right now. Mr. Anderson.
John Anderson, a resident of Newbury Park. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I know many people here would applaud the green goals of AB 32, but we also have to remember that AB 32 is responsible for the regulatory and economic chaos that is driving manufacturers by the scores from California to overseas operations and other states like Texas and Florida. I'd like to stay on finances for just a second. If I understood the presentation from the Finance Department, they refer to a $30,000 annual benefit from the solar panel. By the way, I'm against the solar panel project at the library. $30,000 annual benefit, and that we would have an approximately 15-year payback for the $440,000 that the city put into the project. But I think that is incomplete, and it would be irresponsible to make a decision based on that analysis alone. If we have a total project cost of $1.2 million, we are paying the taxes not just for the $440,000, we're paying the taxes for the federal contribution, we're paying the taxes for the state contribution, and we should be looking at a payback on the total cost of the project, not just the $440,000 that comes out of the city budget. On one quick note, a previous speaker spoke about an increasing disconnect between the council majority and the citizens of Thousand Oaks. And I think moving forward with this project would further that disconnect, feeling like the city council is not listening to the people of Thousand Oaks. There are many people against the extensive hospital expansion. There are people who don't want to see the sign on the freeway. There are people who don't want to see 72-foot buildings on Thousand Oaks Boulevard, and there are many of us who do not want to see the solar panels at Newbury Park Library. So my encouragement is please to cancel that part of the project.
Thank you. Jeffrey Bride, followed by, I'm going to do the best I can, Nari Jaloyan, followed by Steve Luther.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. Jeff Bride, concerned citizen, resident Newbury Park. Speaking on the solar panels, we had a lot of good questions, but a lot of the answers are not filled with facts, and that's very disappointing considering how much money is being considered here for these solar panels. I have attended the meeting that Ms. Perez right there, who did at Newbury Park, which was good. I'd like to see more of those, but I oppose the solar panel installation, and I ask you to do the same, and here's why. Number one, aesthetics. It's going to be an eyesore. Ms. Perez admitted in the meeting she didn't even live in Newbury Park or Thousand Oaks. Again, most of the council members do not live in Newbury Park. I do. I go to the library. I live in Newbury Park. It's a great community. It's not something we need. And in fact, I think it would affect home values if it were built. Number two, technology. It's not proven. Carolyn mentioned about Spain. Spain has seen the solar and green energy as a complete disaster. Even in Wall Street Journal today, Solyndra, which is a company that Obama supported during the stimulus, they're having a 17% layoff of employees. They're canceling a project plant that they were proposing in Northern California. This is solar energy. Number three, cost. This sounds to me like a $1.2 million project test. This is our money. We not be gambling with our money. If we don't have the answers, we shouldn't be moving forward. I do have some solutions. We should adjust the hours of operation at the park, Newbury Park Library, to account for avoiding peak hours. Number two, raise or lower temperatures for heating and cooling depending upon the season to save money. And three, maybe some staff adjustments. Let's buck the trend. Let's be different. Let's not just follow what everybody else is doing. We can create our own goals. We can lower our costs and save our taxpayer money. So again, I ask you not to support the solar panels in the Newbury Park Library, and I thank you for your time. Good night.
Thank you. All right. Nari, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to work on your last name there, and please, pronounce your last name for us, would you?
Good evening. My name is Nari Sukumojan. I'm from Thailand.
Very good. Followed by Steve.
I could not pronounce my last name.
Thank you. Followed by Steve Luther, followed by Martin Gindi. Please.
I appreciate an opportunity to speak to the mayor and the council members. I live and work in Newbury Park for over 18 years. I think this is a great city. I prepare a lot of questions and bullet points to the council member, but many of the question has been asked and answered by the council member, and I appreciate that. I have my point of view when I do something. Okay, I work in a Fortune 500 company for over 30 years. When I'm starting the project, I have to think about cost and benefit. When I'm looking at this solar panel, I don't have anything against solar panel, but this is unproven technology. The cost, are we including the maintenance, and are we including what happened if this thing got damaged by human or earthquake, something that we can. I believe that this project should be canceled or postponed. There are many other alternatives you should consider. Cut down the hours, only open during peak hours, cut down the days, and have an alternate between the two libraries. This will accommodate the residents that use both libraries. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Steve Luther, followed by Martin Gindy, followed by Nick Kidwai. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Steve Luther. I've lived in Thousand Oaks since 1975 and in Newbury Park since 1986, less than 2 blocks from this project. I go in and about, pass by and through this parking lot every single day, so I will be affected. And I wrote an article in the, for the Acorn, which I guess it's going to appear on Thursday, so I'm just going to save time and go right to that. During the community meeting on November 3rd, I heard comments ranging from, we owe too much debt to China, I don't believe in global warming, there must be federal or state pressure or mandates, and the city is being forced to act, or the library uses a lot of power, well, let's just close it. Coal and nuclear are the best sources of energy, and some disparaging comments about city council members and unrelated city projects, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in our messy democracy, everyone has an opinion and is allowed to express it. Here's mine, and I will stick to the merits of this project. It will pay for itself in 15 years or less, and then provide almost free electricity for up to 15 more years before possibly needing refreshing. In addition to the proven and attractive interlocking concrete pavers that will be part of the project, I think the as-designed structure will be attractive and, yes, different. I don't like the way this building looks. That's just subjective. That's just the way life is. But I think it's going to look pretty good. It appears to have been, I think it'll be an excellent display and training site for students and others and start the ball rolling on alternative energy and create some jobs. It appears to have been carefully designed, vetted, and financially structured by professionals, and I don't see any strong reasons not to do it. It'll provide shade, power, modern beauty, a vision of the future. Also, existing and new trees will help soften the look from the street. And last, what will we have in 15 years if we don't do it? A lousy, sun-soaking, ugly black asphalt parking lot. Let's do this.
Thank you. Martin Gindy, followed by Nick Kidwai, followed by Joanne Fonte. Mr. Gindy, oh. Martin Gindy, G-I-N-D-Y. He did leave. Okay. Mr. Nick Kidwai. Mr. Kidwai, followed by Joan Fonte.
Nick Kidwai, resident of Newbury Park, Director, Concerned Citizen of Thousand Oaks, Honorable Mayor, City Council. At the risk of having a lot of concerned citizens ripping their membership cards, I come before you in 100% support of this project, as I did before the Planning Commission. The easy thing would be to sit and be quiet, but I really salute staff for their vision and for being the leaders. I mean, that's what it is. And I salute the committee, both members, for doing their homework, and I hope that the council will have the courage to do what is right for the citizens of Thousand Oaks and the world in the long term. If TOTV can show the overhead, that's a picture of the zero-emission city that's near Abu Dhabi. That's not the city, but it's near Abu Dhabi. I want to read quickly. What would the world's largest producer of oil be wanting to do to produce a city that will be using zero oil? It's like shooting in the foot. But they realize also that the oil will come to an end. And it was also great that I saw the first presentation of an iPad for this project. It was most appropriate. People have it wrong. I mean, we have the money. I don't like it, but we have the state and federal money. We have to take advantage of it. It's not giving it to Caruso for the lakes. This is a good use. And The City Council has not done a good job in promoting it. There should really have been samples here. There should have been a solar panel in a car. I mean, this is the gateway to Westlake. I mean, City Council decision ruined it. This is your chance to save face, Mr. Fox, and do something, and don't belabor this project and delay it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. John
Fonte. I haven't been here for a while.
Mr. Fonte?
I live in Newbury Park. John Fonte, excuse me.
Excuse me, Mr. Fonte. Is this the right guy? Is it? Okay. Never mind. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Live in Newbury Park. I'm a weekly user of the Newbury Park Library. Haven't been here for a while, and I am personally appalled that you are limiting speakers to 2 minutes each, not the normal 3 minutes, especially when you let contractors talk for 15 minutes. You delay us for other hearings, you put them ahead of us, and then here we limit it to 2 minutes. Anyway, I'm going to keep speaking here. I went to the meeting a couple weeks ago at the Newbury Park Library, and I reviewed the staff report and listened closely tonight. I see no reason, absolutely none, to upgrade this feel-good boondoggle just so you can say you're going green, getting a so-called educational demonstration project. Will we ever recoup the city's investment? Only time will tell, but I'm sure those actual results, if they are not positive, will never see the light of day. And if you budget for replacement costs, there are probably any financial benefits at all, zero. Stop spending money on the lakes, the auto mall, the boulevard, and other pet projects of yours. Stop turning this city into another San Fernando Valley, inch by inch and bit by bit. Even if it were truly a worthy investment, this project is ugly and ruins one of the main entries into Newbury Park. I wish the mayor would pay attention. Even with mature trees screening these solar canopies, it would still be a large wall of green blocking the view. Is that what you have in mind, to create city-like canyons? And it may take 10 to 15 years for those trees to mature. In the meantime, we have to look at this hideous structure every day. None of you do, since none of you live here in Newbury Park. The staff report says that many existing trees are in bad shape and should be removed. Well, the city was responsible for maintaining those trees. What guarantees can you provide that you'll maintain these new perimeter screening trees? You don't have a good track record there now. Quite frankly, it's embarrassing. You should see the small little tree that you replaced with one of your dead perimeter trees. My God, it's about this high. It's sitting there right there now. If you still plan to move forward, in spite of what you hear from the public tonight, I suggest you hold off for now and do a survey of Newbury Park residents, all 30,000 of them, who drive by Borchard every day. And while you're at it, you could put a display in the library and ask library users to submit comment cards. Do that for a couple months. Go to the Planning Commission, back to them for their approval first. Better yet, let's have some common sense and kill this project tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Final speaker, Jim Holland.
I'm Jim Hoagland, resident of Thousand Oaks. City Council. Your Planning Commission denied the project not on the green aspect, not on the engineering aspect, but on the aesthetics. I would like you to pay attention to what your Planning Commission has to say. I would have liked staff to have taken the time that it had to have given a thorough address to the aesthetic values, the economics have been belabored when that wasn't the argument. Remember, folks, this is a demonstration project. You may have the opportunity to evaluate similar projects proposed by private developers on private land. What you approve or disapprove here is indeed a precedent, whether you say so or not. So give careful thought to what you do tonight.
Thank you. And that concludes our public speakers on this. And how much time does the appellant have?
A 5-minute rebuttal.
I'm sorry.
5-minute rebuttal.
5-minute rebuttal. I'd call Mr. Adams back up for a 5-minute rebuttal. And also, we had 7 written statement cards submitted. All 7 were opposed to the project. Con. Mr. Okay. All right, Mr. Adams, I'll tell you what, let's get, all right. Staff responses to the questions and the testimony that was given. That would be both Mr. Kearns and Ms. Perez, and then we'll have the 5-minute wrap-up rebuttal from the appellate. Okay? Which one of you wants? Ms. Perez, you want to go first?
I guess I'll go ahead and do a couple. As far as security, the panels will be secured down with, well, I'll call them security screws. They won't be bolts. They won't be something you can just take out, welded in place. City does have insurance. It'll be insured just like any other asset the city has. This is to clarify, quite a few speakers talked about state money. There is no state money involved. This is through Southern California Edison, so the ratepayers, Edison, has this money that is being distributed. So it is not state money. The ARA money is federal money coming through the state, and the CSI rebate is from Southern California Edison, not the state. And I don't believe we talked about global warming. We're talking about CO2 emissions, which is really air quality. Air quality is the air we breathe. I think we can all say that we're breathing healthier air than we did in the 70s. This is also what we're talking about when we talk about CO2 emissions, is air quality. I think I'll pass it off to Steve and Steve Kearns, if he's...
I just have one comment to the relating to the aesthetics of the project. Staff has evaluated the project from a conceptual standpoint at this point. We haven't seen a final design to review the architectural and the proportionality of the structure itself. Any of the design components that would be integrated into the structure housing the roof element portion, which are the solar arrays. The landscaping is a key component of the mitigating the aesthetic impacts of the structures located within the parking area. The parking area, as I'm sure you've all seen, is in need of repair. The landscaping is sparse and needs to be refurbished at this point. So we're looking at it from a perspective of providing a comprehensive and coherent landscape design throughout that parking area to not only minimize the impact of these structures, but to create a theme out in that area which is more attractive for the library itself, from both perspectives, from the interior as well as from the streetscape perspectives from Michael and from Borchard. So that was basically my comments at this point regarding the aesthetics of the project.
I have a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Kearns. Mr. Mitnick, please.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we also heard some comments about why don't you just do it on the roof of the existing library building, and I know that's been touched on a little bit, but I'd like to remind the council that that was one of the initial aspects of this project that the Council Capital Facilities Committee did look at, and staff as well. If that could be done and that would achieve the desired result, that's what would be in front of the council tonight. But that will not work, and again, if we could do it, we would, but it would not achieve the energy savings. It would not be cost effective. If the desire from the council tonight is to go back and look at doing it just on the library roof, or a combination of the library rooftop and a smaller scale version in the parking lot, I'd like to caution the council that that will indeed result in delays, months, if not a year or more, and there are some grants that would be lost, and that's okay if council's okay with that. We would have to deal with that. But also keep in mind the additional engineering study would be $50,000 to $100,000. That's a rough conservative estimate, so there would have to be more money appropriated for more study. And the construction costs, and talking to staff, would be at least $500,000 more because of the challenges with the existing roof. And then there's some unintended consequences such as potential leaks and other structural problems, and perhaps even some visual or aesthetic issues associated with that. I'm not 100% sure of that, but we would have to look at that. But most importantly, the energy savings would drop, and the payback would probably go out 20, 25 years or more so. So the council may wish to simply abandon the project then, if that's a concern. So I wanted to put those points out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitnick. For council, this is the opportunity to ask questions based on the testimony that was given. I'll start down here then. This is not council discussion. We still have the public hearing open. Mrs. Irwin.
Yeah, I think you did not answer the question of Richard. I didn't catch Richard's last name. He had a question about storage batteries and what the dangers are with those, how do they work into this project?
Our consultants are here, but I don't believe there's any storage batteries. We're not talking about fuel cells. We're talking about feeding directly into the grid. Am I right? So there is no batteries. The inverters are just another electrical panel, basically. That's probably the short answer, but if you'd like to hear any more than that.
I just wanted to make sure the gentleman had his question answered.
Okay. Is that it? Okay. Additional, Mrs. Bildel, no? Mr. Fox? Questions of staff?
Yeah, actually the question's for staff and the committee. Did anybody from staff or the committee actually do a site visit to look at what these things look like in person? Ms. Irwin?
Probably 3 years ago, Mr. Gillette and I and a number of staff people went up to Alameda where these parking structures are being used. It would be a slightly different design, but nobody in that city had any problem. I mean, they were very desirable parking spaces. They created modeled sun, and I think, again, that what we saw and what Mr. Gillette and I saw up there and what they have at Northridge looks better than what we see in the conceptual designs, and I think that was the problem also that that part of the problem that the Planning Commission had. I think, again, if we decide to go forward with the parking structures, that we should have either the committee or council look at designs and payout periods for each of the designs. But if the other options, we've thoroughly, as far as the routes, we've thoroughly
I'm not stuck on that
looked at
anymore.
So
to me, it's about the aesthetics.
that we have the ones we saw up in Alameda, there was just no issue. They're parking structures and create modeled sun, modeled light for parking.
All right, well, you're saying parking structure. What I'm looking at are carports.
Yes.
They were carports.
Okay.
These were at two public buildings. One was a juvenile facility and one was an administrative facility for Alameda County. And then I also had the opportunity to look at the ones at Patagonia.
And they look good?
In Ventura. They look fine to me. And I know the city of Ventura has very high standards on aesthetics, but...
Okay, fair enough.
Any further questions of staff during the public hearing? Being now, Mr. Adams, 5-minute rebuttal.
Yes, I'm just going to make a few points, answer a few questions or address a few points that had come up. CSI, California Solar Initiative, is not state money. I think Ms. Perez clarified that. But more importantly, CSI is paid by every ratepayer in Thousand Oaks. For staff, the goal is to bring those funds back into the city. And so using the CSI money really makes sense from that point of view. Our goal was to have the money return to the community to benefit our community. Proven technology, during our opening statements, Jay had mentioned the history of solar, the growth in solar. I would not like to say it's unproven technology. We certainly have firsthand experience with solar, specifically down at Hill Canyon Treatment Plant. This is not our first project, so we're very familiar with solar. There was a comment about the use or the library use in the future. The fact is, it is a municipal facility. The city owns it. Whether it changes use or not, the facility will still need electricity and thus solar. So future uses of that facility really are not germane to the discussion when we're talking about energy usage. A few other comments I wanted to make. We talk about sustainability. The project as a whole is accomplishing the City Council goals and priorities. We have talked about that. I think that's an important part. City process. We have been at this for 3 years. We have looked at every city facility. We've looked at various design elements. We've looked at the roof. We looked at a lot of different facilities. It's we believe, based on that 3 years, we've done the due diligence to recommend the project at Newbury Park Library. In regards to fiscal prudence, we've taken an easy approach to looking at the payback period. Granted, there is federal grant funds, ARA, which is specifically available for energy efficiency projects. Certainly that money could be reassigned to another project. At this point, we're recommending it to be used for solar. As far as CSI, we talked about that money. You know, at the end of the day, the city's general fund will contribute over $400,000 towards solar. That payback is 15 years in the most simplest calculations. Certainly with rates increasing with Edison, that payback could be accelerated up to 7 years based on their most recent rate increases over the last 3 years. And with that, the applicant is available for any further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Any additional questions of Mr. Adams? There being none, at this point, I'll close the public hearing. I'm sorry, did you have a question? For staff. For staff? Okay, I'll keep the public hearing is still open then. Mrs. Bildale-Pena.
Thank you. I would like some clarification regarding the design. Obviously, aesthetics is a major issue tonight, and I am a little confused as to the what Councilmember Irwin mentioned, that the design is not final and will have to go before the committee one more time. If you could please elaborate on that.
What we were talking about today is just the contract for the design. The project hasn't actually been designed. They gave 3 conceptual views of what it could look like. For me, the initial concept looked really massive, and so I would want to see, you know, if we make the panels a little bit smaller, what's the difference in payoff? But there is no design yet. What would be approved tonight is basically that we agree with the concept of putting solar in the parking lot, and that we hire a company to design and then implement that design. So all I'm saying is that if other council members agree with the concept, then let it come back to council with some, you know, really solid ideas, maybe even setups in the parking lot, so that we're all really clear on what it looks like, because the pictures that we have are only, you know, potential ideas of what it might look like.
Thank you. When the committee first discussed this with staff, that was done in 2007. The economic times were different. Did staff at that time consider paying the entire $1.2 million, or how did you figure, how would this be funded?
During 2007, 2008, and I'll use Hill County as the example, we actually entered into a power purchase agreement. At that point, that was the most financially viable option for the city, is to actually buy the power directly from the person who put in the system. Based on changes in tax code, the benefits that private organizations got versus public entities, because we're a tax-exempt agency, there was not the incentive for us to buy it and purchase it ourselves, so the power purchase agreement. Those dynamics have changed to where now we're getting the CSI at a higher level than private sector, and plus we're receiving the ARA funding. So from 2007, 2008, the financial dynamics have changed to where now we want to look at a purchase, a city-owned asset.
Please educate me about Hillcrest, 401 Hillcrest.
Well, Hillcrest, there's two locations that were identified based on demands, load, and also based on financial cost-benefit analysis. Newbury Park and Hillcrest Center. Hillcrest Center is going through right now a structural engineering for the re-roofing of that project. That project is one of the projects that we're also maintaining as far as redesigning the roof. Right now it's a rigid roof that supports cars. We're looking at if we change it into a flexible system and we put solar panels up there, we would put solar at Hillcrest. And for Hillcrest, you would not see it. There would not be an aesthetic issue because it would be under the parapets. But we would be eliminating parking, which causes another concern for that center. So that is in final design from the structural engineer. Bid documents are being prepared, and that will be coming back to council probably towards the end of December.
Are we at risk of losing any additional grants, other government grants regarding that particular project?
CSI has
regarding the deadline.
CSI has a different deadline for Hillcrest, which is out a few extra weeks. We should be able to bid that project and come back to council either towards the end of December or the 1st of January, and we should not have concerns with meeting those deadlines. But if things are pushed off, there is always that potential.
And what is the deadline for this project before us tonight?
Right now we have a extension request in to Southern California Edison. Actually, it's CPUC, right? I'll let Ms. Perez clarify that.
The deadline actually for one of our milestones is tomorrow. So we have asked for an extension so that we can bid it out and get it going. So every day that we delay is a possible risk that we won't meet any of the deadlines.
We've already, if it's my understanding, we've already requested one extension, was granted that one extension.
We actually haven't been granted the extensions yet. We haven't been denied the extension, but we actually haven't even had the request approved.
So that explains why you held this community meeting really quickly after the Planning Commission decision.
Correct.
Okay. Any reason why community outreach was not done sooner, even before the Planning Commission hearing?
I think we might have been basing that on the council saw this project in June, and I don't think we had any comments really coming into the city at that point. And even prior to Planning Commission, before the Planning Commission hearing, we did not have many comments come in. So
I don't recall seeing any photographs when this came before the council in June, any comparison as to the aesthetics of it.
We had the one original concept was in that PowerPoint, I believe.
Thank you.
Anything further? I'm sorry, Ms. Phildown. Mr. Fox, anything further? Okay. At this point, we will close the public hearing and open this for council discussion. And this time I'll start down at the other end. Mr. Fox?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think all the questions that have been raised have been adequately addressed tonight. While some may have a disagreement with the answers, as I made notes through the hearing, I think all the issues that were raised that were quote-unquote legitimate issues have been addressed. There's no tax increase with this. I think the issue of whether somebody lives in Newbury Park or not, while it might be interesting, we're elected citywide. I think it should be understood that we're going to do what we think is best for the community. There are legitimate issues, though, with respect to financing plan. There are legitimate issues with respect to the aesthetics of those, of what's being proposed, and I think those have adequately been addressed. From my own perspective, that's why I asked the question, did the committee and did the staff actually go out and look at what these structures look like? Because at the end of the day, for me, it's really an aesthetics issue. Let me apologize. I think I was the one that raised the state issue. That's because the monies are actually, the title of them is the California Solar Initiative. Shame on me, that's the name of our state, so there's maybe some confusion there, but in fact it's not state dollars. I'm a little concerned with the time element, although, you know, I realize those things happen, but I'm not very comfortable kind of with the gun to our head, have to make a decision this evening, notwithstanding I recognize that everybody did their best efforts. I think Ms. Irwin's suggestion, if the council moves in this direction, to look at the architecture and the aesthetics as a standalone issue makes a lot of sense. But for me, we had 2 council members and staff that went and physically looked at what these things look like. I trust their judgment. They say they look good. And in fact, the aesthetics are going to come back. From my perspective, though, for the committee, if we're talking about screening, I'm concerned about that. And I'm concerned that if we're putting something up that doesn't look good and we're trying to screen it, I have a problem with that. So I get the screening part, but from my perspective, these seem to look good. As you drive into the driveway at Newbury Park Library, they should look good. As far as the use for that, for these structures, I have to tell you, I think pulling into a parking lot with no parking structure versus a parking structure, most folks are going to think that's a good thing. Your car is out of the elements, it's out of the sun, it's out of the rain. That's a good idea. And my sense is most people, if they're there, they're going to use them. I think the issue is how do they look? That's the bottom line. How are they going to look? And if they look good, they'll be a positive for the community. If they don't look good, that'll be a bad decision on our part. There's just no, I think the financing and some of those other issues, while people can have different perspectives, the bottom line has to be, do they look good? Do they add to the site? And so those are my comments. I'll support the concept moving forward because I think the questions have been answered. At the end of the day, I think all of us need to take a good hard look at, do they look good? I'm all for solar. I'll just kind of repeat what I've heard, not at the expense of putting something up that doesn't look good at a public facility. I think the fact that they could be done in a private sector setting, that's all well and good, but this isn't private sector. This is a public facility using public dollars, and it's a public project. And so I think it makes a lot of sense that as the representatives of the community, it's got to pass, at least from our perspective, that it looks good and enhances the area. I think the solar aspect and the energy savings aspect, for me, is secondary. I'm not minimizing the impact of what the environmental benefits would be, but it has to look good. If it looks good, it'll be a good project. So I'm certainly in favor of approving the concept and moving forward with the caveat that the aesthetics and the architecture needs to look good. I'm not going to make the motion, but there's been a lot of work done with the committee, so I think it's only appropriate the committee members put the motion out there. But those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Mrs. Spildale, opinion.
Thank you. I would like to ask the committee that should this be approved tonight in concept, is there a possibility that when it comes back before the entire council, not just the committee, but the entire council, that if it's still not palatable to many residents, that there could be a denial of the project, and is that what could happen?
Well, excuse me, we don't have a motion yet, so I'll wait until we get a motion on the table, and then you can talk about it, I think, at that point. Once we have some sort of an action that we're going to take and find out what the consequences of that action are.
I do have several concerns. First of all, I do not question the technology, the solar technology at all. And yes, the U.S. is far behind other nations, developed nations, in terms of renewable energy. There's absolutely no doubt about that. I am concerned that perhaps not more community outreach was done. We did have one community meeting where basically the residents who attended were split. Half were in favor, the other half were against, and according to the staff report here. Community outreach is always extremely important. I lament that that was not done in time for the council to make a decision. I really do not like having to make a decision with a deadline of tomorrow, basically, in order to qualify or be eligible for a grant by Southern California Edison. If the community and if the residents don't buy into this, I don't think it would be a good decision to support this project. I would like to see another community meeting to get input from the residents and really make another announcement, not only in the newspapers, but also within perhaps a 2,000-foot radius, because we need as much input as we can have. The fact that only about a dozen or so people, perhaps 24 people, showed up at this community event is to me not enough evidence that this is wholly supported by the residents. The money aspect, yes, $1.2 million is taxpayer dollars, no matter how you slice it. There's no doubt about that. Whether it's $440,000 coming out of the general fund, or $1.2 million also from taxpayers as well as ratepayers. It's basically, the onus is on us, it's our money, and it's money being spent. That is why I asked the question about $1.2 million, how long would it take in order to get that back, and the answer was approximately 25 years. That is a long time, no doubt, but I feel very uncomfortable supporting this motion or tonight. I want to see if we get an extension. We don't even have a confirmation on whether we did indeed receive this extension of the $347,000, whatever it was. If we are indeed able to have an extension and to receive an extension, then we should certainly take advantage of another community meeting in order to spread the word. That is where newspapers come in, and both of the newspapers who cover Thousand Oaks, I wish they could focus on this more, and perhaps that did not happen over the summer months. But while the press can't cover everything, the city does have a responsibility to make sure that people are informed. And the fact that more people are here tonight is because it has been reported several times now in the last few weeks or so in the local newspapers. We also need to have that on the city's website. And while I don't want to miss an opportunity to actually invest in renewable energy, which I find extremely important, and actually I do drive a car that receives 48 miles to the gallon, and I'm very happy with that vehicle. I am concerned about the financial aspect of this investment. So at this point in time, I have not quite made up my mind whether I will support this in concept. I like the concept, but I would like to see, before we move any further, that we have more community meetings and more community input. Perhaps I could make a subsequent motion on that as well.
Thank you. Mrs. Irwin?
Thank you, Mr. Gillette. First, I wanted to address one of the speakers that talked about whether we are going to be increasing taxes locally. You can rest assured that we have no ability to do that without voter approval. We get 3% of the property tax and 1% of the sales tax, and that's all we have. We have to live within our budget, unlike the state and federal government. So unless the voters decide that they want to increase taxes, we cannot do that. And whether or not I'm against state grants or Edison grants or federal stimulus or ARA grants. As a matter of fact, I did vote against the council requesting additional stimulus money. This is money that our residents have paid out. You have paid your federal tax, and it is going to be given out regardless of whether Thousand Oaks asks for it or not. And honestly, the city of Thousand Oaks is a huge donor to the federal government, and I think as a council person, it is our responsibility to get as much money back in our community as we can. That money, you have written the check, and it will go elsewhere. Somebody was talking about global warming. I think, we can have some on the left agree on one thing and some on the right agree on another thing, and I don't think we should really get too much into that argument this evening. I think what we can support, even if we're talking about partisan politics, we can completely agree that the United States needs to move toward energy independence. We are very dependent on the Middle East. It is an extremely volatile region of the world, and personally I think this is all about our national security. The cost of fuel, again with AB 32, is going to skyrocket. I think that you'll find that the payoff period, if the project is done like this, if we're able to extend the grants, the payoff period will be closer to 10, 11 years. We are going to be getting a lot of free energy after that, up to probably at least up to 30 years. And so basically, I think this is a smart move for our budget. This isn't a feel-good project. This is a smart move for the environment, for those of us that are really concerned about the environment. And we have some people saying that solar is not proven. It's been proven for over 30 years. It's been widely used in Europe for a very long time. I have solar at my house, and the payoff period for the solar at my house is 8 years. It's working exactly as it's supposed to. My bills are much lower than they were before. And finally, we have we need to weigh this. We have a city policy toward moving toward sustainability. Mr. Gillette and I and the city staff have looked long and hard at where there might be some locations that we can put solar. They're not the locations are not as obvious as the wastewater treatment plant, where we're able to put solar down there and nobody sees and nobody's really bothered by it. For solar to be most effective, it has to be near the buildings that are using the energy. And so this was, after much research, what we thought was the best option to meet city policy, to do it in a fiscally responsible way, to work on the environment, and that's basically how we finally got to this solution. Again, I don't think that the conceptual pictures looked great, and I think that we're really going to have to do some work to make sure that these carports look as good as possible. If any of you have a chance to go over to Northridge and take a look, or over to Patagonia, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. They're not monstrosities. They will provide much needed shade, and I think it'll make for a very interesting area with the pervious concrete, the new landscaping, and our library. So I am going to move staff recommendation 8A1 and 8A2. 8A2 is for awarding the contract for professional services. I will put in the caveat that staff needs to come back to the full council with a design, and obviously I suppose Ms. Bill de la Pena was concerned that we wouldn't be able to stop it at that point. I think we probably would be able to. We would probably have to refund money, and we would lose, I assume, the money that we're paying toward the contract. Maybe staff can elaborate on that. So there is a point that we could still pull the plug at that point, but I think for me, I really think that we need to kind of put our money where our mouth is, and I am happy to support this.
Thank you. I have a motion. Comments to the motion? Ms. Bill de la Pena.
I would like to present a subsequent motion to that. And that would be that we first find out whether we do indeed receive confirmation to extend the application period or eligibility period with Southern California Edison, and if that is the case, to hold another community meeting and bring it back before the council ASAP.
Is that clear? Okay. Madam City Clerk, are the content of that motion clear? Comment to the substitute motion? Mrs. Albano.
Well, it's not a substitute motion. I'm not quite sure.
I'm sorry. Would you tell us please describe exactly what it is for us?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
I just want to make sure we do it right.
If I understood it correctly, Ms. Bill de la Pena was saying that she wanted to have a second motion heard, so that Mrs. Irwin's motion would be to approve the entitlements, and then and also, which is 8A, I want to make sure I have the right one, 8A1, and then 8A2 to approve the contract, but to have the final design blessed by the entire council. So that would be the first motion. Mrs. Bill de la Pena was basically stating she would like to then do another motion that would say we would hold off, and I think what you need to explain is what we would hold off on until there's some confirmation about the grants and doing another community meeting. I think the important thing is the first motion is for the entitlements would be granted, so that the appeal is granted, and that the design would come back, that you're actually awarding those contracts.
Okay, that's the first action then.
That's Mrs. Irwin's, and that's the first motion that's on the floor.
Mrs. Irwin's motion.
Yes.
And is the city clerk comfortable with that motion? He's got it. Okay. Okay, any additional comments to that motion? Okay, I just, I did a little research on our participation with the California Climate Action Registry. The Climate Action Registry is a voluntary registry to track the city's greenhouse gas emissions. In 2009, the city was named a climate action leader by the California Climate Registry. The city registered in 2008 and used 2000 as our base year, and we've been reducing our carbon footprint for years through energy conservation, alternative fuel vehicles, and energy generation at our, now it's an award-winning Hill Canyon treatment plant tracking system, solar tracking system. The city has reduced its CO2 emissions by 37% since 2000. This effort will help the city comply with the provisions of AB 32. Whether we like it or not, AB 32 is the law, and it wasn't rejected. A provision that was solidly upheld just 2 weeks ago in the election, stating clearly that Californians want to lead the nation in environmental sustainability. Like AB 939 in 1990, which mandated that we reduce the amount of trash that we send to the landfills by 50% by the year 2000, which seemed like an audacious goal. We met that goal and now divert 65% of trash from the landfills. That's a tremendous success. The City of Thousand Oaks has and will be a leader in environmental programs, setting examples for others to follow. And we have spent 3 years developing, working, looking, talking to bring this project forward. And the 3 primary goals of this particular action is, number 1, to reduce the city's carbon footprint. Number 2, to reduce the city's reliance on fossil fuels. Number 3, reduce the city's dependence on foreign oil. This project addresses those 3 primary goals. So with that thought in mind, any additional comments to the motion? There being none, please vote.
The motion carries 3-1 with Councilmember Bill de la Pena dissenting and Councilmember Glancy absent.
Okay. Okay, Mrs. Bill de la Pena, now you're...
Thank you. My motion would be, and Mr. Mayor, I have to tell you, I agree with everything you're saying. I do believe in renewable energy, but I think that we did not do a very good job in community outreach, and I think therein lies the problem. So my motion is that we find out whether we've even been granted this extension regarding the Southern California Edison grant, and if so, to ask how long it is, and to hold a community meeting as soon as possible, have it advertised on the website and the local papers, and send out notices to all the residents and businesses within the 2,000-foot radius, not only 500 or 1,000, but 2,000, because we do need as much input as possible regarding this. And of course, it would be my hope that the community would indeed be supportive of this, and that once this entire project comes back before the council, as obviously this motion evidence that the design would be more palatable. But what I am looking for is really more community input regarding this project, and that is my motion.
And if the extension is not granted?
Well, then we will have lost out on that anyway, on that money, even for this motion that was approved just now.
Okay. Is the clerk clear on the motion?
Yes.
Okay. Comments to the motion? Mrs. Irwin.
Yeah, I certainly am all for community outreach, but not postponing. I mean, we're not going to get an answer until we hire the company to do the design, and when it comes back to council, I can certainly see having a community outreach at that point, but I think we need to move ahead with this. And so I'm not going to be supporting the motion, although I agree with having a community meeting. We just need to, we need to move forward if we want these grants. If the grant is not there, it doesn't make financial sense, and we're not doing it anyway.
Additional comment to the motion?
There would be no additional comments to the motion, but I'm sure that staff will get back to us as soon as possible regarding this.
Okay. And this is, okay, we still haven't dealt with 8A2.
No, we did.
Okay, 8A2 is done.
So we just have to...
On this one. Okay, any additional comment? Being none, please vote.
The motion fails 1-3. Council members Fox, Gillette, and Irwin dissenting, and Councilmember Glancy absent.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes this item. Thank you. Item 9 was held earlier, moved up on the agenda. Item 10. I'll give staff a minute to reshuffle up there. Okay, item 10, department reports. Item 10A, Mr. Prescott. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is a request from the new owner of the Hilltop Villa condominium project for a modification to the city ordinance which granted the zoning for that property, and also the affordable housing covenant between the property owner and the city. That project, as you know, is under construction on Hillcrest Drive. I believe it's just east of Skyline, north side of Hillcrest. Construction began a couple of years ago. The then developer, however, was because of the housing crisis that came upon the nation at that time, was unable to finish the project and actually lost the project through foreclosure. The bank that foreclosed was IndyMac Bank, which no longer exists, and their assets were taken over by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which in due course marketed the project. A new developer has purchased the property and is ready to complete it. And the project has been standing in a partially constructed state now for probably at least 2 years. And I think it's in everybody's interest to get that built. At the time, shortly after the project was approved, there was a requirement in the original approval for 7 of the 36 dwelling units to be restricted and sold to moderate income households at prices consistent with those income limits. About a year after that, the developer approached the city and wanted to essentially pay an in lieu fee rather than actually building those units. The city was agreeable to that and negotiated a total fee of $1.4 million or $200,000 per affordable unit. That money would be paid to the city. The units then could be built market rate and sold at market values, and the money would be deposited into the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund to be used for creating affordable housing elsewhere in the city. Once the project went into foreclosure and was not completed, the money was never paid, and the new developer who was buying the property approached the city about renegotiating that fee in lieu of, in recognition of current housing market values and prices, which are probably in the order of, I would guess or estimate, around $200,000 to $250,000 a unit less than they were at the time the original agreement was negotiated. So staff has been negotiating with the new developer. We've enlisted the consultant, highly expert and experienced in these areas, Kaiser Marston Associates, to review the development pro forma, the reasonability of the estimated prices, the request for reduction in the in lieu fee, and other economic aspects of the project. And we have staff concurrence with the developer and in an amount supported by our consultant of a reduction in that fee to $800,000, which is approximately still over $100,000 per affordable unit. It would be prorated over the total 36 units in the project, which then would be approximately $22,000 per unit, payable to the city as the escrow is closed and deposited in the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So the actions before the council tonight are to first read the ordinance in title only. This is an amendment to the original zone change ordinance, and it stipulates that a fee, the original zone change ordinance required building the units. This is a change in the ordinance to allow payment of a fee in lieu. And then the second action would be to amend the Affordable Housing Covenant to amend the fee to the new amount of $800,000 to be paid on a pro rata basis of the 36 units in the project. The new developer is here today and I believe has put in a speaker card. They are, at least they've represented to us, they're very anxious to resume construction of the project and complete it as soon as possible. So it's our recommendation that you do items 1 and 2 in the recommendation section of the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Prescott. Questions of staff? Any? Mr. Prescott, in this negotiation from 1.4 down to 800,000, do I have the numbers correct? 800,000 in this environment, considering that this is the old Hilltop Feed project, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Given the condition of the building industry and what have you, that 800,000 still seems like it's a lot of money in this environment. I'm assuming this was the result of an extensive negotiation between staff and the new developer?
That's right. It began in probably August, around the middle of August, I think. And the original amount requested by the developer was quite a bit lower than that. Okay. So we've reached something that we think is reasonable. The developer may testify that they feel that's really at the high end. And you know, part of the difficulty for everybody is that there's, you know, in any development project, there's risk. They're taking on an expense, or actually reducing an expense that's already associated with the project, but their ability to make the payments and make the project work and gain equity partners and financing depends upon what they'll be able to sell those units for in the future, and that depends on the overall general economy of the nation and the housing market and the policies of lenders in terms of advancing money for construction of new residential projects.
Well, thank you. I recognize, I fully recognize the need to continue to support, to the extent possible, the trust fund. But in this environment with a stalled project and what have you, to get someone to come in, pick it up, that still seems, from my perspective, seems like a lot of money. So, additional questions or comment? Any questions of staff? It's the pleasure of the council. Mr. Fox.
I'm going to move the staff recommendation 1 and 2. I think this is a step in the right direction in our efforts to continue to provide quality, affordable housing in our community. Commend both the applicant and staff for some tough negotiations, but we're going to realize what we're attempting to here, and that's some quality housing in the community.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Comments to the motion? Yes, Ms. Vildale-Pena.
Yeah, I will not be able to support this motion because we already got rid of the linkage fees that would require builders to commercial or residential to pay into the housing trust fund because of the economy. So the housing trust fund is not being funded at all right now, other than through redevelopment dollars. And I don't see, to me, it is not very good policy to substitute a builder who is now not at all providing any affordable units. That was not the intent with this project to begin with, and therefore I will not be able to support this.
Okay, additional comments to the motion? From my perspective, the alternative of seeing the project sit there partially completed and deteriorating and all of the things associated with that is the worst possible alternative. So I appreciative that staff was able, first of all, that a developer was willing to come forward and that staff was able to reach an accord. I think it's in the best interest of the residents of the city, because a partially completed project sitting up there does no good for anyone. So, okay. Additional comment? Read in title only after the action. Please vote.
The motion carries 3-1 with Councilmember Bill de la Pena dissenting and Councilmember Glancy absent. And the ordinance title is an ordinance repealing the uncodified ordinance 1455 NS and amending uncodified ordinance number 1432 NS to allow payment of fee in lieu of providing affordable housing.
Okay. Thank you. Item 10B, fiscal year budget calendar, 11/12, 12/13. Mr. Adams.
Yes, good
Welcome
evening.
back.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm excited to be here tonight. Tonight, I'm here to present the calendar, the budget calendar for fiscal year 2011 through 2013. The two-year budget process in conjunction with the financial strategic plan is an important strategic planning process requiring significant city council and city staff time. The budget calendar is the first step in the planning process and is used to ensure tasks are being completed in an orderly and timely manner. Staff's recommendation tonight is to approve the calendar establishing study sessions and public hearing dates for fiscal year 11/12 through 12/13. On the front page of the staff report, we highlight some key dates for the City Council. The Council's goal-setting session is scheduled for February 8th of 2011. The goal-setting session is a critical step in the budget process. This helps staff focus on Council priorities and make sure that we're allocating resources to those priorities. Staff will also be present at study sessions to Council June 14th for both the capital budget and the operating budget. The attachments to the staff report include a more detailed budget calendar. Actually provides about 3 pages of detailed dates and meetings. We want to thank the City Council, Finance Audit Committee, and the Capital Facilities Committee in advance for assisting staff with its review of both the operating and capital budgets. Again, staff's recommendation is approve the budget calendar for fiscal year 11/12 through 12/13, and staff is available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adams. Comments, Ms. Bill de la Pena? Questions?
It's just a simple question. We used to have our study sessions at the extremely cold Los Robles Banquets Room or Banquet Center, and now I see that it is going to be at the Founders Room.
Correct.
Any reason?
I think it was city managers thought he would change it up to have it at the Founders Room. It's here local, and we want to show off the room. I believe his intent was.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully that will be a savings and energy as well that night, at least. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Additional questions? Being none, please vote.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Councilmember Glancy absent.
Item 10C, Bicycle Facilities Master Plan. Kathy Lowry.
Hi, good evening.
And your assistant.
Mr. J. Spurgeon. Hi, I'm going to go through rather quickly an overview of the Bicycle Master Plan. I bring it to you tonight for approval of the bicycle master plan because Caltrans requires a bicycle master plan to be updated every 5 years, and as of next month, our 5 years is up. So we put together the bicycle master plan with the help of our bicycle advisory team. Over the last 5 years, we've worked on various things, including the city's website for Bike Safe. We have maps and brochures, information on our buses. We promote local events like the Ride of Silence, the Tour de Cure, the Breakaway from Cancer, Cruising the Conejo, as well as the Tour of California that's also coming again this May. We help promote the Boys and Girls Club bike program where they donated bicycles. We donated helmets. We provide a bike safe booth at Public Works Week. There's a week-long program at Sycamore Canyon School that we promoted bicycle safety. We did a 3-weekend program at Dos Vientos Community Park. We do Bike to Work Day with a pit stop outreach to commuters. There's a community ride, which Jackie Irwin participated in this year. We do a lunch ride where we're promoting better bike parking. We have various public works projects. You're probably familiar with the Sharrows and the Boulevard. We put Pedersen Road on a road diet. We opened up the Norwegian grade to bicyclists by having them access through the Reed Road access. We completed various Class 2 bike lane projects. Canary Creek South is under construction, should be done in the next month or two. There's 3 very challenging Class 2 bike lane projects currently in design. And just an update on Willow Lane is it turned out it's going to be a little too expensive to build in the near future, so it's been moved to a long-range plan. And we just got reinstated as a bicycle-friendly community. They gave us another one of these swell signs, and it'll be posted at the Community Transportation Center. So I'm open to any questions, and I hope you'll take action to approve the adopt the resolution approving the 2010 Bicycle Facilities Master Plan.
Thank you very much. Questions of Ms. Lowry? Being none, just one at the bottom of the Norwegian, or where the Norwegian grade interfaces with Tierra Rajada Road. I haven't noticed, and I've been through there a number of times. Are there now signs that direct people that aren't familiar with it, that are cyclists, when they come in, to direct them over to Reed Road now?
Yes, absolutely. It's on Santa Rosa Road and Moore Park Road. They're special bicycle directional sign. They're green, and it actually tells people distance to how to get to Olson Road, and the same with if you're on Olson Road, how to get to Santa Rosa Road.
Okay, so it reverses it and sends them down to the old treatment plant.
Yeah, and just, you probably haven't noticed it, but they're the size for a bicyclist. So if you were on a bike, you'd probably notice it more.
I see, okay. Yeah, well, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, what's pleasure of the council? Ms. Bill de la Pena?
Move approval of staff recommendation.
I have a motion. Comments to the motion? There being none, please vote.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, could I ask you one quick question as a follow-up? I read in the paper there was a cycling accident, a pretty serious one again this weekend. What's the condition of the cyclist?
I don't know.
Do we know?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, last I heard from the police department is fairly stable. I don't know if the individual's been released from the hospital, but still in the hospital and stable at this point.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Item 11, redevelopment agency reports. We have none. Item 12, council issues, recommendations. A, meetings. We have none. B, mobile home park discussions. Mr. Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council has the report in the packet. It's no surprise to council that mobile home park issues have been at the forefront for the past couple of years. I note in the council packet that another mobile home park issue is being addressed in Camarillo with respect to the court system. The report basically outlines the city's efforts with respect to coming to the assistance of residents that live in mobile home parks. It has come to a point now where multiple mobile home park owners are requesting rent increases that are substantially higher than the city's ordinance provides for, and we are headed for, if we don't do something, we are headed for yet more litigation, more uncertainty, and based on our history, likely bad outcomes with respect to our mobile home park residents. So in working with city staff and in getting some small success in dealing with this issue with the owners of Vallecito, I'm asking the council to continue my appointment as the council representative dealing with the mobile home park issues, consistent with what we did with Caneo Mobile Home Parks. And I would envision that we would endeavor to look at a group of citizens that live in mobile home parks and put together a task force of residents that would sit down with the owners and look at the issues that are affecting those specific mobile home parks, as well as a broader issue that's affecting the city, and see if we can come to resolution prior to the litigation that is certainly in store for us if we just sit on our hands and do nothing. And so the recommendation is to allow for a liaison from the city council to work with the residents of the mobile home parks and the park owners and city staff and a citizen residents group to see if we can find some resolution to these issues.
All right, before I continue with that and ask for comments to the motion, I have 2 speaker cards on this item. Valerie Hopkins, please, followed by Mr. Kidwai if he's still here. Good evening, Ms. Hopkins.
Sorry, I've been sitting too long. I can imagine how you all feel. My name is Valerie Hopkins. I'm a Thousand Oaks resident, and I'm pleased to say that I've been a Thousand Oaks resident for 42 years. My children were born right here at Los Robles. We also have opened a few emergency rooms, but I'm very glad to see now that we have bicycle big signs and friendly and ways to go. The reason I'm addressing you is, number one, I'm delighted that you're looking at having a liaison with the parks and also putting community members on it. I am the chairperson of the Ranch Mobile Home Committee, and you will be receiving a package in the next few days that has been put together by the committee. The package is going to contain letters that have been written by the mobile home residents. I would like to tell you that the age range in Ranch Mobile Home Park is 65 to 99. The average income is less than $1,000. These homes are not mobile. They are not on wheels. They have been moved in and installed on risers. At least half of the people at Ranch Mobile Home are disabled. About 25% of those people are not ambulatory out of their homes. The lots are very small. It is very plain wrap. The closest thing we have to an amenity is a very small community center, which is about the size of this area. I see I'm almost out of time. When you receive those packages and those letters, please understand that you're dealing with people who love Thousand Oaks, who have served Thousand Oaks, and who have paid taxes in Thousand Oaks and are now retired. And we need your support, and we need your help. And we know that you can't, hold up one side against the other. But please understand that people who are in this park have moved there because we want to be here and we want to continue serving the community. And Since I got drafted to be the committee chairperson of Ranch Mobile Home, I will be happy to be on the committee. And if you have any questions, please.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hopkins. The other speaker, Mr. Nick Kidwai. Mr. Kidwai, I suspect he's gone. Okay, that concludes it. I have a motion, discussion of the motion. Mrs. Bill De La Pena.
Thank you. I just have a question for the city attorney. Given that we will have a public hearing by the Rent Control Commission, bless you, and Rent Adjustment Commission next month, and then again in January, how will this affect the public hearing process?
I can't totally speculate to that, so it's going to be up to those particular park owner, and I believe it's the same owner of both parks that are pending, that whether they're willing to put off those to see if there's some kind of facilitated overall plan that could come up with that would be amenable to both the park owners and tenants in the city. But regardless of that, even if things go forward, if a new way of dealing with mobile home park issues or a new whether or not the rent adjustments move forward, the hearings and the appeals to the council, it doesn't preclude the discussions taking place in this different forum that Councilmember Fox is suggesting. And hopefully, if there is a resolution that everybody comes to, then that will affect everything that's in play. I think that's the best way to put it.
Okay, so you're saying that there's a possibility that no public hearings may take place in January or in December if a resolution is found?
Well, what I'm saying is I can't speculate to that effect at all. I believe that the public hearing in December will take place, and I believe that the public hearing in January will probably take place as well. But I guess what I'm really saying is, one, those public hearings don't preclude trying to facilitate a different solution and at a different venue, and two, trying to facilitate that solution doesn't preclude having the public hearings. And I would assume that maybe one of the first tasks that that Mr. Fox might consider is talking to that or having some kind of dialogue as to whether that park owner is willing to hold off on those hearings or whether he's going to move forward. But again, I think the important thing is neither one precludes going forward with this idea.
And there is also then no conceived or perceived appearance of a conflict of an interest having parents living in one of the affected mobile home parks?
That's a question to you.
Sorry, I didn't realize. Mr. Mayor, members of the council.
I'm sorry, I'm assuming that was a question of the city attorney. Yes.
You know, I guess I look at this as no one has, I have not heard that be an issue, that yes, the council members' parents, my understanding is, do live in one of the mobile home parks, but I believe that the role that he's suggesting for himself is to try to facilitate, and since Councilmember Fox is a trained mediator and has that background and degree and has been successful in other settings, is he suggesting is using those tools to get these two groups actually talking. And as the report stated, Mr. Fox has already opened that dialogue. Park owners know that he is the one that he is bringing this forward, and we received word from the park owners' representatives that they're very, very interested in this. So I don't see it as an issue, since the park owners don't perceive that as an issue.
Thank you.
Okay.
Maybe one of these days you'll speak as nicely about me as well. Thank you. I will support the motion.
Thank you, and I would also offer to Mr. Fox at the appropriate time, or when it happens, I have broached the issue of mobile home park affordable housing inventory relationship with our new assemblyperson, our new assemblyman, and he's researching it. He understands it. One of the difficulties that historically has interfaced with this, there are a number of mobile home parks in the state of California that don't want to be classified as affordable housing. And so any legislation has to be very carefully crafted and probably work its way through on a county-by-county option basis. Anyhow, I'm more than willing, if I can serve in any way to interface with the legislature in that particular, I'm more than happy to do that. Any maker of the motion, any additional comment?
Yeah, I would just remind the council, I almost wish you had a replay of the council meeting when we talked about Conejo mobile home parks. We're going to do our level best as a council. This isn't about one council person. At the end of the day, this entire council is going to have to make some decisions as it relates to this. And as I mentioned before, because I do in fact have some experience with these type issues, the likelihood of a perfect ending is not very high. And I think the council is very, very well aware of the complexities and the challenges that both the park owners, the residents, and the city council is facing. And if you recall the city council meetings where the Conejo Mobile Home Park folks came down, despite our best efforts, we were unable to reconcile some of those issues, and that was a difficult issue for the council to reconcile. And a number of people in the community took advantage of that, not residents, but took advantage of the political advantage of that, and it even played itself out during the recent campaign. Campaign's over. That's why I purposely waited for this to be done. Hopefully we now can have a public policy discussion without the grandstanding and some of the things that occurred during the campaign, and actually work on behalf of the residents of the mobile home park. If Ms. Albano walks you through the continuum of what would occur, it is a very simple proposition. The residents and the park owners go to a hearing, of which there's a city commission, a board of hearing officers. They make a recommendation to the city council. The council either adopts that recommendation or it does not. If the park owners don't like the decision, they could sue us. And then we go to court, and somebody wins and somebody loses, and the loss is big. And so it is a very simple proposition. From my perspective, if we go down that road, we have completely failed the residents that live in mobile home parks. As many times I have said before, if we are putting those decisions in the hands of a judge who likely does not live in Thousand Oaks, is not accountable to the people, but is simply going to rule on the law, then we have let down the people of this community, unless our attorney tells us that our case is so strong that the likelihood of success is very, very high. I've commented before, I'm not interested in fighting to the last drop of the park residents' blood. It's not fair. And so I think we need to find another alternative, and that's going to take a lot of hard work. Ultimately, it'll be brought back here to the city council, and I'm optimistic, hopefully, that we can find some common ground and some resolution. I think what Ms. Hopkins pointed out illustrates the difficulty with what we're dealing with. In many cases, we're dealing with senior citizens who are essentially not making any real income other than a fixed income. Many are disabled. They are in the fourth quarter of their life, so to speak. They've invested, they've committed, they've given to their community, and they need help. They need help, and so that's what we're trying to do. So with that, I would move to move forward with this proposal.
Okay, Mrs. Vildela-Pena.
You do have final comments. I just wanted to clarify that I don't think any candidate took advantage of the plight of the mobile home park tenants during the campaign or did any sort of grandstanding. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Mr. Fox, maker of the motion, final comment. Thank you. I'm sorry, Mrs. Irwin.
I'm a little late with this. I just had one question. You said that you're going to have a committee made up of mobile home park residents?
my intention is to talk to the residents of each individual mobile home park and get a group of residents to sit down and have the dialogue with the park owners. So it's very transparent, it's very open. As Ms. Albano talked about, I see my role as facilitating and mediating the parties, but ultimately it's the park residents that are going to have to decide on whatever proposal alternatives are out there. But I see, certainly, as has been pointed out and expected to be pointed out, because certainly I have firsthand knowledge of mobile home parks, and because my parents do in fact live in one, I certainly can appreciate and understand some of the challenges that the park residents have. Ultimately, I think the park residents are going to have to make decisions.
Yeah, I just had, just something to consider, not part of the motion. I spoke to Hank Lacayo a couple of days ago, and he is a senior advocate and was very interested in getting involved and helping the park residents. I think he's talked to a number of them already. So if you would, you might be interested in including him in your
I know Hank very well. I know him personally. He has a tremendous skill set, and that's something that I'll talk to the city attorney about.
Oh,
that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, are you maker of the motion? You're done? Okay, please vote.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. City Manager, follow-up requests of public and announcements of upcoming issues. Mr. Mitnick.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, no additional follow-up by way of upcoming meetings, issues. You heard earlier comments about the State of the City address, the annual State of the City address, and that'll be on December 7th, a Tuesday, at 11:30 a.m., and that'll be at the Los Robles Golf Course banquet facility, and information can be found on the city's website about that, as well as at the Chamber of Commerce's website. The Chamber of Commerce is the host, and that'll be at 11:30 a.m., and the public is encouraged to participate. There will be a City Council reorganization meeting that night at 6:30 p.m., not 6, but 6:30 p.m. It'll be in the chambers here, and that's when by what we mean by reorganization, that's when the City Council selects its new mayor and mayor pro tem. The next council meeting after that will be on December 14th, and at this point in time, we have 3 public hearings to point out. One will deal with the Auto Mall code amendments. We heard reference to that earlier in the evening, and that'll involve parking issues, landscaping issues, and the Auto Mall sign itself, as well as some Wayfinder sign issues. Second hearing will be the annual status report on the parking restrictions for oversized vehicles. Council adopted that about a year ago, and that went into effect in January of this calendar year, January 1, 2010, so 1-year update. Third hearing is a proposal requesting concurrent processing of the various entitlement applications for Thousand Oaks Boulevard Storage Partners Project 1259 East Thousand Oaks Boulevard. That project's been before council. It's coming back to you. And we're also hopeful that Mark Watkins will come back with recommendations for the Water Rate Structure Review Committee appointments. That's it by City Manager follow-up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mitnick. Item 14. Item 14 is a new item, public notices, which my understanding is to be required on the agenda of on the public agenda of the City Council meeting, and it deals with items listed under public notices are to be a matter of public records only. These items do not require council action. Do I need anything else, Madam City Clerk? That does it? Okay. Item 15, closed session. Ms. Albano.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the public and viewing public and staff. We have 4 different closed session items. Two are our conference with legal counsel, one on anticipated litigation, significant exposure litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9B, one potential case, and then another anticipated litigation, which is initiation of litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection C, one case. The third item is conference with real property negotiators. The property is located at the southeast corner of 310 Kelly Road and 1872 Newberry Road in Thousand Oaks. Agency negotiators are Scott Mitnick, City Manager, and Amy Albano, City Attorney. Negotiating parties for Conejo Valley Unified School District, who are the property owners, is Dr. Jeffrey Barstead and Dr. Joel Kirschenstein. Under negotiation, price and terms pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. And the last is conference with labor negotiators, city designated representatives, city manager, assistant city manager, city attorney, and human resources director, employee organizations, senior management association, Thousand Oaks Management Association, and Thousand Oaks Employee Association pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. I do not believe that there will be anything that needs to be reported out, but if there is such an item, it will be noted in the minutes from this meeting, as well as there will be an announcement at the next business meeting, which would be December 14th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Albano. Item 16, our adjournment. We adjourn this evening in memory of Richard Rick Johnston, retired city employee from our Municipal Service Center. Rick passed away on October 29th after an extended illness. Born in Chicago in 1950, Rick moved to Orange County, California when he was 6 years old. In 1973, after serving in the U.S. Army in Korea and Hawaii, Rick settled in Ventura County. He was a gifted artist, and during most of Rick's 25-year career at the city, he designed and created road and city event signs. Rick retired in 2006. Rick's favorite pastime was camping at the beach and in the desert with his friends. On behalf of the City Council, we'd like to express our deepest condolences to the Johnston family. Rick was well liked by all of his co-workers. He will be dearly missed by his family and friends. There being no further business to come before us, we will stand adjourned to our next regular meeting, the reorg meeting at 6:30. It's a half an hour late, 6:30 on December 7th, 2010. We're adjourned.